What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto was the forgotten son who commanded an army of revived Hokage? If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description box to original creator of this beautiful creation. Quietness settled over the now bloodied and corpse-littered battlefield. Fire crackling and burning away the evidence of what transpired before. The winds blew over the field excitingly, like it was trying to take in all the memories and experience of the dead shinobi belonging to the allied nations and battlefield stations, barely standing and crumbling. A body stirred from underneath the rubble and ash-ridden ground. Hands covered in cuts grim and dirt. The bloodied hand reached and rubbed the dirt and blood from its owner's blonde hair. Naruto glances to the left, seeing Madara stirring from the rubble, injured and already showing signs of fatigue. He stared back and smirked at Naruto. So Naruto, still up and fighting I have to give you credit, your resilience is commendable. However, just think of all the killing, violence, and destruction you could have stopped if you would have just allowed me to have the Kyuubi. I would have resurrected the Jubi in its final form, creating a new world order of peace, free of shinobi's greatest weakness, freedom. Naruto painfully crawls to his leaf village Hite 8 lying on the ground, the one Iruka gave him, and the fabric from Jiraiya. Naruto slowly reaches for it. Running his hand on the cut of the leaf symbol, the memory flashes of a certain fight between him and his best friend in his young youth. He shook it out of his head and shoved it in his pants pocket. Naruto spits blood from his mouth on the ground and glared at Madara with pure hate. First, you weren't even creating peace that was Obito's and Nagato and his comrades' dreams. You just wanted to be in control. Second, I had true plans of peace and you screwed it up with your infinite Tsukuyomi. Your dream caused a great evil to awaken, Kaguya, destroyed my village, the villages around it. Killed my comrades, friends, and someone that I grew to have feelings for, led my parents to die. And created the events leading to Obito's death and defection from the village. A true shinobi with the will of fire. And you think that's peace? Madara chuckled darkly. Control? Yes, it is, because in this world having choices will always lead to wrong ones and will govern more violence. Wasn't your goal to create peace by the so-called ending cycle of hatred? See, our goals and ambitions aren't so different. Naruto glares at Madara. Don't talk as if we are the same. Your goal was to enslave us in our own desires, with the cost of having freedom. Mine was to find true peace. By ending the cycle of hatred and finding the path of peace. But I wanted to do it without the cost of freedom. We're totally different people and I would not have killed innocents to attain it. Madara gazes out at the distance. The smell of death, charred corpses and cinder were still fresh in the air. He stared back at Naruto with eyes void of empathy. Well, seems like talking won't change anything and you clearly have a different goal than mine. Thanks to you and your comrades destroying the Jubi and defeating that backstabbing Black Zetsu and his master Kaguya, seems like I have lost, but in a way so have you. Madara charges and jumps in the air, going through the hand signs. Fire release, dragon flame release song technique. As flaming dragon head shaped like fireballs are sent en route towards Naruto. Naruto rolled to the left side and threw his hand on the ground, doing a backward handstand before twisting his other hand out and pulling out a kunai with an explosive tag. He hurled it with great speed towards Madara as he runs to a nearby rock, ducking under cover. The tag explodes as Madara dodged out the way. Madara retaliates by throwing two kunai explosive tag knives and flipping through the hand signs. Wood release, rain of spears. Sending 17 razor-sharp wooden spears. Naruto reaches in his pouch, grabbing 5 shuriken, coating them with wind. He sends them at the spears, cutting half a dozen. Naruto dodges 2 spears but does not see the kunai merged with the spear. With his chakra nearly depleted and too close for him to dodge, they explode, sending Naruto flying in the air, with the remaining spears piercing his arm and right side of the chest under the ribcage. Naruto lands on the ground hard, grunting in pain. He reached over and pulls out the spears one by one, each time wincing in pain. Damn it, I'm pretty much depleted of chakra. On top of that, I'm bleeding badly from my already gained wounds, and even if the fox is healing me, I am still in trouble of dying of blood loss. The bastard is still using lots of jutsu, despite the injuries me and everyone else gave him. The nine-tailed fox stirred from inside Naruto's mind. Naruto, can you hear me? Oi, Blondie. I got to talk with you. Naruto awakens in his mindscape facing Kurama. "Ya? What Kurama?" He responded, slightly annoyed, ignoring the extensive blood flowing out of his body like a waterfall. "I'm in the middle of something. I'm basically running on fumes at this point." Kurama stares seriously at Naruto. "Yeah, I know, Naruto. I just want to know what your plan is, since your chakra is almost gone and mine is slowly fading. I don't have too much left and most of it is being used to fend off Madara while I talk with you. Not to mention you're really injured and there is only so much that I can repair." Naruto sighs in defeat, his eyes filled with despair and pain. "Well, Kurama, I honestly don't know. He still has clearly some chakra since he's still blasting powerful jutsu at us. While I don't know exactly how much we have already used like 80% of our chakra against that giant 10 tails and snapping out Madara from that Kagaya goddess's possession, and then the battle of killing her and somehow Madara surviving the possession and Sasuke's Amaterasu annihilation. I don't know if we will defeat him. I have been contemplating if we should give up and wait for him to strike me down." The Nine Tails glared at Naruto and growled with irritation and anger. "So that's it? You're just going to give up? Damn it, Naruto. You, the savior of the leaf, defeater of pain, slayer of Kagaya, the now deceased rabbit goddess, and the newly appointed 7th Hokage, and the never gives up and goes back on my word former loud-mouthed brat and number 1 hyperactive knuckle-headed idiot, just gives up? I will not allow my jailer to die in such a pathetic way. Well, Kurama, unless you got tons of extra chakra left or a magical jutsu that you can pull out of your ass, I'm all ears." Kurama was just about to retort when he remembered something, more importantly, a jutsu that might possibly work. "Hey Naruto, I think there might be a jutsu, but it uses a lot of chakra, not to mention it has possible side effects." Naruto rolls his eyes at the tailed beast caution. He knew Kurama was the blast jutsu ask questions later kind of person. "Look, Kurama, whatever it is, I am all open for it. Seriously, at this stage we're not going to win, and we need all the help we can get." "Okay, well, the jutsu originated from the Sage of Six Paths and is only known by us Biju. We have never used it because it is only allowed to be used in the direst of situations. The jutsu uses a sort of space-time ninjutsu, but a lot stronger. It is essentially time travel." Naruto's eyes widened. "Time travel? Wait, hold up. How is that possible?" "Well, Naruto, theoretically, it should not be possible. But to the shinobi world that is not known, there is a reason why it has only been known to us. Think of what, say, someone like the guy we're currently fighting got his hands on it. He could go back in time and change anything that did not suit him. No one would stand a chance against that. The greed of man would claw to get it, but I know your heart, Naruto, and you would never cause time change for your own selfish desires. Anyway, it uses Fuinjutsu, which should not be a problem for you being a seal master and all. I guess that makes sense. Wait, Fuinjutsu? How would we be able to do it then? I have no ink nor any paper left. And don't forget I'm running out of chakra to make one of this power. Besides, if we did, how would it work?" Kurama thinks for a moment. "We could use your blood to start it by doing the routine summoning, since it is also a reverse type summon, if you will. Then I'll pour what's left of yours and mine's chakra. Then all you have to do is write the seals on the ground and let my blood pour into it before doing the hand signs. It's going to be a lot of chakras, but I'll be damned if we don't try. To how we do that, we go back in time to a point that is significant that will be your anchor point." Naruto processed the information before responding slowly. "Kurama, how many years can we jump back?" Kurama let the cogs in his brain turn as he thought more. Well, I think a possible decade at most, maybe more depending on how much chakra we have left." Should I do it? I mean, I don't have anything holding me back and there is nothing left for me here." He let his mind trail off before a light huff from Kurama brought him back. He stood straight, new determination replacing the despair and sadness he felt earlier. He would have to mourn his friends later. "Yeah, I'll do it, A significant point in my life. While I would like to go back in time and spare my parents' death, I was only born then, and I did not play any role. Besides, how was I supposed to jump back in time to a time where I don't remember? I would say when I graduated from the academy or a little bit younger than that." "Yeah, I'll use that. Okay, I'll do it. Wait, will I still keep my body?" The giant fox thinks for a second. "Yes, I believe you will. A seal of this magnitude will require your knowledge and the current version of yourself into the past. Though something to take in, Naruto, this may not be true, it may be. But if you go back in time you risk a paradox. Naruto gave the giant fox a quizzical stare. Paradox? How? Well, think about it, Naruto, there is going to be two of you in the past running about. That puts a huge stress on the timeline continuum. Time is a powerful, fickle mistress that should not be trifled with. You could and most likely cease to exist once time catches up to you. Your younger self could disappear. Or you could end up in a continuous loop, and no matter the choices you make it will always lead to the same path. But as I said, these things could happen or could not, just keep that in mind. He stares at the fox with a saddened expression. Well, that is unexpected news. I wonder if there was another reason why this hasn't been told by anyone or been used for that matter. If someone's younger self disappeared from time or they were put in an endless loop of time, things could become sure. Ceasing doesn't seem too bad if it happens. I doubt I'll become close to anyone. I just want to change the future for my younger self and friends and stop a lot of events from happening. Like my ultimate goal of stopping Madara and the Eye of the Moon plan and Black Zetsu from awakening Kaguya. Kurama smiles, even losing everything he doesn't give up. His willpower is truly staggering. Alright, you ready, Naruto? Yes, I am ready, but I should probably change into a henge. I'm too recognizable and people would think I'm the fourth Hokage minus the eye. I also kind of figured if I am to make any real progress I need a comrade with the knowledge of my true identity. The third Hokage would be logical, being the head of the village and all. Kurama nods and he performs the henge. His body became taller, going on around 6 feet 0. His blonde hair became a light hazelnut and less spiker. His visible eye became a dark onyx black. He then reaches into his pocket, pulling out some bandages and wrapping it around his right eye to cover his Sharingan, a final gift of friendship that his pardoned best friend Sasuke Uchiha gave him. Kurama gives a few minutes of instructions on the seals. Would have gone longer, but he's starting to tire and lose consciousness from the massive blood loss. Naruto bites down on his thumb, blood pouring from it as he starts to write the seals. Kurama pours in his and Naruto's chakra into the seals. Alright, hand signs, time, Naruto, make it quick. Naruto rapidly flashes through the hand signs with inhuman speed and slammed his hand down on the seal fast. Chakra exhaustion immediately hits Naruto as blinding light followed by an explosion happens all around. Darkness started to cloud his vision, followed by roaring ringing sound like lightning in his ears and then unconsciousness. Sarutobi Hiruzen was enjoying a boring day, not minding the peace and somewhat busy streets crowded with shinobi and civilians alike. He then froze and nearly fell off his chair when a figure came crashing through the Hokage tower roof and landed right in front of his desk. After Sarutobi regained from gaping like a fish for a few seconds, he moved to his kunai holster under the desk. When the figure slowly started to get up, the figure managed to get on his knees and was staring at the floor. The third Hokage studied the man in front of him, seemingly lost in a trance. He was quite tall, around 6 feet 0 feet. His body looked near peak human condition minus the injuries. His body was built for strength and speed. Toned six-pack, broad shoulders, big arms that looked like they could deal some serious damage. Muscles not being well hidden under his torn and falling apart clothing. His face was the most shocking, though. He was clearly almost reaching adulthood and he had a hardened face, almost like someone he knew. He had a vertical scar going down his right eye to his cheek and a scar in the shape of a kunai slash on his chin. He also had 2 smaller scars diagonally across his cheek. All in all, he looked like a battle-hardened warrior. But his eyes are one of them, at least, since the other was blocked from bandages. They surprised him. That eye. It's almost like I'm staring at a veteran from the Third Shinobi War. So much loss, despair, and pain. Those eyes show almost a man who had lost everything, with nothing left except his path of righteous fury and vengeance. If he isn't a threat, I should let him have a psychiatric evaluation. What did he endure to have eyes like that? Sarutobi returned back from his thoughts when the figure's hand reached out for some sort of object on the floor just as his Anbu guard swooped in. Kunai and Tanto blade pressed to his throat, ready to open his throat should the occasion arise. Sarutobi put on his best threatening expression and said, "Who are you, and what is your business here?" The figure looked up and stared wide-eyed before his eyes started to water. He reached out weakly and muttered one word, "Old man," before crashing face first into the floor. Sarutobi's mouth sunk like a fish and his eyes widened. The way his mysterious assailant said it caused Sarutobi to take a double take. Only one person calls him that. He realized that the man bringing much-needed excitement in his otherwise mundane job was unconscious and leaking blood all over the place. He glanced to the side and saw a headband which he guessed was the item the mysterious man reached for before. He gazed a bit closer and realized it was made from black fabric with the symbol of the leaf wanted. Realization plastered on the man's face and he barked at one of his Anbu. Wolf-san, a well-built young man wearing the standard Anbu uniform and sporting a porcelain mask depicting a wolf flashed in front of him, head bowed. Sir, take our injured man here to the hospital stat. Hurry as fast as you can. I have some questions for him and I don't want him to die on us. He had a leaf headband so he might be one of our allies. Hurry. Wolf looked at his Hokage and nodded. Understood, Lord Hokage. Wolf flashed in front of the unconscious man lying on the floor. He bent down picking him up, wrapping the man's arm around his neck and holding his back with the other before flashing out of the room to the hospital. Sarutobi turned around glancing out the window. He looked down and realized that he picked up the headband. He was mesmerized by it. He traced his wrinkly fingers on the large cut on the leaf symbol before sighing. His excitement was gone and it was back to the seemingly never-ending pile of work. What an interesting day. I hope he survives. I have a feeling what he could say would be life-changing. Wolf raced across the rooftops with inhuman speed, startling civilians and shinobi alike. A few minutes of running and he finally reached his location. He jumped in front of the hospital entrance, checking that his order was okay. He opened the door with haste and ran to the front desk, startling the young brown-haired nurse at the front. Apologies for the haste. Hokage-sama wants him treated and healed up ASAP. He is bleeding profusely from unknown injuries. The Hokage didn't say if he was an ally or not, but he did say he was carrying a leaf headband. Take precautions in case. Gesturing to the unconscious man being held by him. The young nurse nodded and called some other nurses and they carried him via stretcher to the room and perform an analysis and treat him. Wolf nodded at them before leaving in a swirl of leaves to report to the Hokage. Naruto's eyes woke up to a strange room. He glanced to the right and saw the sun was nearly set and night started to be visible. He groaned before trying to stand up and saw that his arms and legs were held by straps. He also noticed that his body was covered in bandages. A door swung open and a nurse walked in carrying medicine, startling Naruto. She stared wide-eyed, her mouth forming a giant O. He tried to call out but his throat was dry and sore. He began to cough violently and tried to reach for the cup of water on his bedpost. The nurse was already there in a flash. She poured it in a cup and slightly raised his head, allowing him to drink. The cold water soothed his burning throat and he drank the whole cup. He looked up and muttered a thank you. She smiled professionally and nodded. Turning, she began to walk out the room. Which in turn shocked Naruto as he saw under her uniform a shirt with the Uchiha symbol on it. He hastily croaked, "Wait." She stopped and turned around waiting for his words. "What's your name?" She gave him a quizzical look before she gave the same emotionless nurse smile. "My name is Kaide Uchiha. I'm a nurse here and might possibly your new friend for a while until you reciprocate." She walked out the room and closed the door lightly, leaving a stunned Naruto in the midst. Naruto realized that while he regained consciousness for a few seconds before coming to the hospital, he saw the Uchiha complex was not abandoned or empty. What the hell? I must have hit my head really hard, otherwise did I go back in time too far? I mean, from what I can remember, the massacre happened around the time of me being 6 years old. So I guess I went a bit too far. I even lost some age too. I feel like I'm 18 right now. Damn temerarious fox can't even get his jutsu right. Naruto groaned before slumping back on the bed, staring at the ceiling in thought. A knock came on the door a few minutes later. Naruto glanced at the door before rising up again and facing the door. "It's open," he responded in a gruff voice, still suffering from the smoke inhalation. The door creaked a bit and 4 figures walked in. 3 men wearing the standard Anbu uniform, one of them being identified as Wolf and the other was sporting a mask looking like a crane, and finally the third was a bit taller and more muscled, had a mask sporting a brown bear. The most important figure was the old man wearing the red and white Hokage uniform. He walked in being flanked by the other 3 before Wolf retreated and sat by the window, while Crane leaned against the wall, and finally Bear stood by the door, hand resting on his tanto blade. The third Hokage kept his reserved smile, void of any true emotion. "I'm glad you are okay, young man. You recovered way faster than I expected. Naruto swallowed a lump forming in his throat and he noticed his hands were shaking faintly. In front of him was one of the first people that truly cared for him. He took a deep breath and sighed. How long was I out? 5 days. Naruto sucked in his breath. 5 days? Damn, that's a long time. Sarutobi began to smoke his pipe and blew out a puff before responding. Recuperated better than most. You have piqued my interest though. It's not every day such an enigmatic man comes crashing into your office looking like death washed over. You are clearly a shinobi or a mercenary. I can deduce that much judging by the doctor's report of your body which said you were covered in 18% scar tissue. But after seeing your headband you must be from the village, but odd since I have never seen you before. So who are you and what do you want? Naruto looked out the window absorbing the tranquility and serenity of the village, trying to insert himself into it. Sarutobi gave him a calculating look trying to understand his emotions. He was a closed book after all. Naruto turned to look back at the Hokage. He thought he'd responded amicably. I didn't exactly plan to come crashing into your office. That was by mistake. To answer your question, I'm from the Hidden Leaf, yes. To answer the rest of your questions, that is quite a long story. I've got time. Naruto glanced up at the bored yet cautious Enbu staring at him before looking back at the Hokage. I'm sure you do. So which is why I ask that you give me a private audience with yourself. I do need to speak with you. I mean you no harm or our village. Sarutobi leaned back and studied the man. He is still in pain and with his injuries, he couldn't make a move even if he wanted to. Course he could be faking it as well and waiting until my guard is down before he'd strike. The man in front of me is definitely a trained ninja and has taken lives before. I can deduce that much, but I see it now, in his eye, that he doesn't want me to harm me. He glanced to the left looking at Wolf and Crane. All right. Wolf, Crane, Bear, you may wait outside. I'll be fine. Please activate some privacy seals in the room. Crane and Wolf looked at each, hesitating slightly. What could the Hokage be thinking to leave himself alone with this unknown man? They did as they were told reluctantly. Bear removed his hand from his blade and reached for the seals in his pouch before the other two bowed. As you wish, Lord Hokage. They placed privacy seals all over the room and began to walk out the room before the man on the bed called out to Wolf. Hey, you, the one in the wolf mask. Bear already being out the door waiting for the others while Wolf looked at Crane with a strange look who shrugged in return. He slowly turned around and faced the one who called. He responded in an emotionless tone per standard of any Anbu. Yes? He stammered briefly, I wanted to thank you for getting me here so fast. I probably wouldn't have survived if it wasn't for you. Wolf smiled under the mask but still responded in the same emotionless tone. No need to thank me. I was following orders, but if you want to truly thank me, don't betray the village or cause me to distrust you. Naruto gave him a good serious nod. Deal, he responded, voice without hidden deceit. Which gained a nod from Wolf, who removed himself from the room leaving only Naruto and Sarutobi. Sarutobi chuckled watching the two talk. He then turned back to Naruto. Alright, we're alone, so you going to answer my questions now? Naruto tried to move his hands but realized he was still strapped. Could you remove these straps? I don't think that's a. Naruto gave him a miffed stare. You really think I could take out the leader of a hidden village in my condition? What am I gonna do? Beat you to death with my arms. Besides, don't you want to see the real me and not a henge? Sarutobi didn't even realize he was wearing a henge the whole time. He thought for a moment before sighing. He threw a kunai for Naruto, which he caught expertly and began to cut the straps. Interesting. He still caught it even though he was immobilized, and in his condition still managing it with fast reflexes and precision. No doubt reflexes like that are honed after years of combat, and he still kept a henge on in his condition, undetected. He's definitely a Jonin or above. The last strap was cut and Naruto stretched, cracking his neck and muscles, hearing the satisfying pop sound and removing the stiffness from his body. He glanced back at Sarutobi before smiling. That's better. Be warned, you're in for a shock. Naruto performed the hand sign and the henge was dropped. Sarutobi nearly fell out of his chair for the second time when he saw the henge dropped. The figure still kept the same physical body appearance except shrinking to around 5 feet 11. 2 tattoos appeared on his body. A large black dragon with red eyes staring with blazing fury to those who'd normally be fortunate to catch its gaze, but was mostly covered in bandages this time, and the standard ambu leaf tattoo on his right shoulder. But what really changed was his face and hair. His cheekbones and eye shape became more like a red-haired he knew, his hair turned from brown to sun-bleached yellow. And his eyes turned from blackness to the ocean itself. Only one person ever had hair and eyes like that. He almost mistook him for Minato, except he never had a tattoo nor had bandages over his right eye. The figure almost looked like Kushina with his cheekbones. But it wouldn't be her. Sarutobi returns from within his mind. You have really piqued my interest now. You almost reminded me of someone I know. A cousin or long-lost brother perhaps? The blonde Cyclops slightly grinned. If you're talking about the fourth, then no. In fact, I'm his son. Naruto. The third Hokage's face became shocked and downright in disbelief at the revelation. Wait, it's not possible. How? Your injuries? Naruto's body heals from any injury not leaving a scar. And you're supposed to be in the orphanage. Why do you look so much older? And why do you have a headband over your right eye? And how do you know you're the fourth son? Naruto raised his hand, calming the rapid questions from the Hokage before he gave a chortling laugh. Really? It's not that hard to fit two and two together, especially when we strike such similar resemblance. To the injuries. Yes, I know he heals, but if the circumstance is right, and say have about less than 18% usable chakra, and if the injuries are severe enough both physically and emotionally, it would not be healed by normal or other ways easily scars wound form. I also know that my mother is Kushina and my godfather is pervy sage. I mean Jiraiya. The Hokage cracked a smile and laughed a good hearty laugh at Naruto. Only you of all people could call the great toad sage and Sannin of the leaf a pervert. When did you find out? Naruto's smile slightly fades. I found out in much darker times. I wish that you could have told me sooner. I get later on why you did it, to protect me from people who hated my father, but I always wanted to know who my parents were and if they loved me. Naruto notices Hiruzen's sad expression and continued on. It's okay, I know you meant good. And to answer your first question, it's quite a long story actually. Naruto rubbed his head in frustration, trying to come up with a way to explain his shit show of a life. Well, I don't know how much I can go into full detail. But basically, I am from the future. In a nutshell, the world we came from was hell, and someone told me of a jutsu to go back in time and change the events that will unfold. Hiruzen leaned back and stared wide-eyed at Naruto. What do you mean by, change the events that unfolded and that it was hell? Naruto watching a young couple carry their smiling boy of 7 hand in hand. He turned to Sarutobi with somber eyes. Basically, everything is gone. Konoha, its ninja and villagers, men, women and even children, the other lands, and their shinobi and villagers were gone and razed to the ground. Everyone besides maybe 50 people or so survived. I'm not completely sure. I was the only one left that I really knew about. Hiruzen stood up, visibly shaking as he stared out the hospital window, gazing out at peaceful villagers and the shinobi, imagining them gone. Men, women, and children, all dead. It scared him to the core. He turns around and stares seriously at Naruto. How did it happen? Naruto looks back at the old man with sadness and anger, clenching his fist with such fury it looked like he was about to pop a blood vessel in his arm. The thing that kills most in our world. War. More importantly, this war was the 4th Great Shinobi War and by far the one with the most bloodshed. It was created by a ruthless, fanatical man who believed peace was attained by destroying the thing that makes us weak. Freedom. His twisted plan would rid the world of individualism. He was ultimately betrayed by one of his men to benefit his real boss, one who was bent on total destruction. The fanatic's idea was based on another of his employees, which sounds like a pretty decent idea from his perspective. But he forced a brutal dictatorship on them. He was a brutal, violent killer who slew thousands of shinobi and innocent civilians alike, even his own loyal man, to attain it. Hiruzen stared wide-eyed at what Naruto said. Would this person really do it? Kill innocents and even his own men to get what he thought was true peace? I'll have to ask later on how he did it. Trying to get past the shocking information that was just thrown at him. He tried to think tactically. Okay. Well, if you came back, does this event happen in the near future or? Naruto thought for a moment. Not quite. Judging by how a lot of the people and places look younger, I can assume that I traveled before I graduated from the academy. Nothing drastic that I can really think about happens now. Everything starts to go down when I'm 12 during the Chunin exams. The old man concurred. Yes, indeed you are correct, I mean your younger self is only currently 6 years old and hasn't been initiated in the academy yet. Well then, what will you do until that happens? I don't know your skill set until I can hear from you yourself. What rank were you? I thought about maybe doing some spying for a few months, maximum a year. Just because nothing bad is going to happen in the near future doesn't mean I can't keep an eye on things. I could possibly do some spying on Orochimaru and his freaky as shit experiment labs. Maybe even stop his alliance with a certain village before it happens and keep an eye on the other villagers. I have done spy missions on other villagers before we became united. As to what my rank is, technically I'm only a genin, because of future events I never got promoted beyond that. And then during the war one was promoted to 7th Hokage, just in time to lead my village to their deaths. The Hokage had questions spinning in his head until he managed to spit them out. Hold up for a second. What alliance first of? Second, what about the lands uniting, and how did you get from being's genin to the leader of the village? Naruto gave a sheepish smile. Oh right, forgot you being in the dark and whatnot. I don't know how much I can really say about the future. Being here already puts stress on the timeline. Knowing too much of the future is never good for anyone, but if this is going to work I will have to eventually tell you everything. Sigh. Alright. When I am 12 the Sans Kage breaks the treaty between the villages and is forced to team up with that snake bastard. Orochimaru then kills the Kage and disguises himself as said Kage. He then attacks the village with his men that he experimented on and recruited. The village hidden in the sound and the help of the Sand Shinobi he kills many good men including someone very important who first treated me humanely. It was. Naruto tried to swallow the lump in his throat and the tears that threatened to pour out. He could not finish the sentence but Hiruzen figured out that Naruto was talking about him. He was determined not to die if he could help it this time. But still to find out the Kage betrayed the treaty and that Orochimaru could weave his fangs into making them do it was shocking. The old man looks at Naruto. And the other things? Naruto took a deep breath before speaking again. Oh right. The villagers' cages decided that fighting on their own would not be enough and they had too little forces to both combat the main enemy and any forces of the other lands that would try to attack. They made the decision to put aside their differences and unite and fight a common foe. Thus, the Allied Nations was formed. During the war they became great allies working together. Hell, even the Tsuchikage and Mizukage got along and shared a drink or two together. I made some great friends with the other shinobi in the different lands. As said previously, based on future events I was never promoted higher than genin. I would have been possible during the Chunin exams when I was 12 but the way things happened. That deprived me of that opportunity. And then it just got worse and worse and I was too busy with other things to do another exam. I then left the village for 2 years to train with Jiraiya sensei and then more stuff happened and then finally the war. When I showed my skill in tactics during the war, the 6th Hokage promoted me. Naruto smiled remembering one of the best moments in his life and the proudness that one of the closest people sent on him. I finally achieved the dream my younger self strived for. Sarutobi takes another puff of smoke before responding. That is a lot of info to take in. I see that the future isn't so good. So if I enroll you into the village as a shinobi I need to know your skill set, what you do good in and such. I can assume that if you became Hokage that you were strong. Naruto laughed and grinned for the first time in a long time. You bet, old man, I was the best. That earned a chuckle from the Hokage. Naruto continued on. And well, my skill set is quite good because of the war and some of the events I told you about. I became strong and honed my skills. Taijutsu I would say roughly high Anbu level, ninjutsu Kage level. It's one of my strongest skill. I am also very good at Kenjutsu, placing at Jonin. I also mastered Sage training and a near master at Fuinjutsu. It came out as a statement rather than a brag. He then clicked his tongue and spoke again. Almost forgot Genjutsu would be Genin non-existent but because of a something have it would be High Chunin. Naruto gestures to his right eye. Sarutobi beamed with amazement at how strong Naruto has become, even mastering Sage training and Fuinjutsu. It made him worry as who Naruto was facing could leave him in such a mess if he was that powerful. Right, I have been meaning to ask you about that. I guessed that you were Minato at first because of your similar looks, but I then realized he never had damage to his eye. So how did it happen? Naruto rubs the back of his head. Well, you see, it is not damage per se, it was a gift from my best friend before he died. Naruto continued when he sees the semi-confused look on the Hokage. Before he died, he and one of my other close friends, one of the best medics out there, transplanted his eye in my right one as a final gift and bond between us. His name was Sasuke Uchiha. Naruto sees the shocked expression plastered on Sarutobi's face. That means you have the Sharingan, but how? Show me. Naruto reaches for his bandages and unwraps it, revealing a fully matured 3-tomo Sharingan staring out at the Hokage as if it was studying his every move and analyzing it to the smallest details. Sarutobi was shocked between words. With you of all people attaining that power. It's truly amazing. Your friend must have been great. Naruto smiles sadly. What many know of Sharingan is only a front. There is a power that lies in the eye far more powerful than any could imagine. Only known in a scroll located and built by the head of the clan, and a few others knew of its power. I have heard rumors of something similar in the Anbu Black Ops, one of them being an Uchiha, but I am still not completely sure what it is. Well, I'm not surprised. Only a handful have ever gotten the power, so it's not all common knowledge. Naruto pours some chakra into his Sharingan, activating his Mangekyo Sharingan as an oddly shaped pinwheel appears. Naruto started to explain. Very well. The Sharingan has a second stage called the Mangekyo Sharingan. When attained, the user can wield eminence power. Each user has a unique power specific to their eye. Sasuke's, for example, has a power called Amaterasu, which is basically black flames that cannot be extinguished and will burn until the user commands it. His other eye also controls where it goes, often performing an attack called Blaze Release. Every user shares a certain power that's the same. It's called Susanoo. Basically, you summon an ancient spectral giant being from another realm with tremendous defense and power. Each Susanoo is also quite different depending on the power and the user. There is a catch and a cost. The catch is that if you use it too many times over a long period of time, you will eventually become blind, and it puts lots of stress on your body. The cost of getting it is different than a few would say. Some believe you need to kill your best friend to get it, but to actually get it you must watch someone closest to you die. To watch the person closest to you die is a big price for achieving this Mangekyo. Sasuke must have suffered a great ordeal to gain the Mangekyo. Naruto closed his eyes and remembered what Sasuke told him. It wasn't pretty, as you could say. It drove him deeper down the dark path. Speaking of Uchihas, you gonna tell me? The third Hokage gave Naruto a quizzical look. Tell you what? Why, the attractive nurse I saw was an Uchiha. Sade? She's one of the best nurses we have. It's a shame that she has to be killed like the rest of the clan. I hope Itachi is merciful. Naruto's eyes widened and he began to splutter. Wait. What? Are you saying you gave the order for Itachi to wipe out the clan? When? Sarutobi waved his hands. Whoa. Calm down. I thought you knew about this? The order was given a week ago. Itachi needed to prepare. He's doing it tonight. Naruto's brain processes the info before he made the dumb idea of jumping out of the bed. His injuries were still quite severe, and he fell. He cursed and tried to get up. I had to get there now and stop it. He began to make his way to the window. He stared sadly at Naruto. Why? You know it must happen. The Uchiha clan is going to start a coup d'état in our village, which could spark a civil war. A war we can't sustain for. Naruto slammed the wall behind his bed, startling Sarutobi. I know, damn it. I know they were going to start a war. Sasuke told me during the war. He also told me on one of our last nights together that he wished someone saved his parents and his clan. I saw the damage and pain it caused him. He killed his own brother to avenge his clan. He turned from the kind, happy kid into a merciless, cold, distant, asshole, hell-bent on killing his brother for most of his life. If I can save my best friend from that pain, you can bet I will. Naruto tried to stand, but pain flashed in his body and he grabbed his leg. Damn leg. But you know what they will do. You can't change that. Naruto glared at Sarutobi. I can, and I will, old man, even if it kills me. I'll stop their curse of hatred. That damned Danzo and his schemes. I know he wanted them dead and set Itachi on the clan exchange for Sasuke's life. He's wrong to think what happens with the Nine Tails was their fault. It was someone else's. He realized his ramblings confused the Hokage even more. He spoke more frantically this time. I'll explain when I can, old man. Until I get back, do not trust Danzo with anything. He wants you dead and he has an army to get it. Root is still active. Please don't let him order another attack on them. We need all the allies we can in the future war, and I'll be damned to leave a valid clan like them to die. Even if they are arrogant and think they are superior assholes, they still are a powerful and well-known feared clan. Sarutobi was shocked at the revelation of Danzo and Naruto's speech. Very well, you better hurry, Naruto. I dispatched him an hour ago before I came to check up on you and warn you not to go near that area. Good luck. Naruto nodded and performed the henge once more. He took his leaf headband, putting it over his right eye. He stood up and poured some chakra in his body, numbing the pain and giving him a surge of energy. He was about to climb out the window when the third Hokage called out to him. He turned around just in time to catch a kunai holster and shuriken pouch. He nodded and said, "Thanks," before waving and telling him he will see him in a few months or a year, and disappeared into the night. Sarutobi leaned back and puffed a smoke before standing up and disabling the privacy seals. Wolf and Crane walked in half cautious, followed by Bear, hands resting on their weapons. They removed it when they saw their Hokage was fine. It's all right. He was a spy of mine. He was wearing a henge, so I did not recognize him. He was informing me of what he knew. They nodded and flanked him again as he walked out the hospital entrance. Crane? He said, stopping, causing his entourage to stop with him. Crane gave a quick glance at the third Hokage. Yes, my lord? My informant will be going back in reconnaissance and information gathering for a few months or a year. I want to request that you make an opening for him in the Anbu when he gets back. I'll have him formally tested to assess his skills, but I know he's worthy to be in Anbu. Your old friend and Anbu Lieutenant Commander Haruki should be notified. If you could do it today, that would be great. Quote. Crane nodded respectfully. Understood, Hokage-sama. I'll do it right away. Crane disappeared in a swirl of leaves to the Anbu headquarters. Sarutobi stared at the now night sky, listening to the information Naruto had bombarded him with. War. End of the world. Time travel. Suddenly his peace didn't seem so bad anymore. Good luck, Naruto. I hope you achieve what you came for all our sakes. He turned back around. Instead of heading home, he went back to the tower and continued with his long, extensive paperwork and began planning for this war to come. Kana Uchiha, who just recently turned 18 a couple of weeks ago, was a chunin from the Hidden Leaf Village, could say she was excited to be back home. Her older brother Naoda, a Junin from the Stealth and Information Retrieval Unit, also known as the Reconnaissance Division, had just returned from a week-long mission from the Land of Water, along with her father Hino last night late. A well-known and respected member of the side branch of the Uchiha clan. Kana was a little bit taller than the average female height, going on around 5 feet 7, weighing in around 51 kilograms. She had a round face with medium-high cheekbones and a blunted chin. Her eyes were a little bit bigger but still small and softly curved. Her irises the same onyx color as her hair, had a black deep hue and small centered pupils. She had small, thin, flat eyebrows and a small, slightly curved nose centered between her cheekbones. She had a well-athletic built body because of her job in Protection and Investigation Division, which is essentially a trained village guard. She also, however, sported a voluptuous, curvy figure which many would not openly admit, would be jealous of. Honami was just walking Kana to her compound before leaving, but Kana invited her over because her brother had returned and she knew the two were close friends. Honami was a brash, energetic as any Inuzuka, but she could also be cool and level-headed, which was rare in her clan. She also had an athletic and curvy build. She had hazelnut brown hair tied in a ponytail, with canine-like chestnut eyes, and purple Inuzuka fangs on her cheeks. She too carried the standard chunin attire. She, like most Inuzuka, had a ninkin. Her ninkin was a large, smoky grayish-black dog with yellow canine eyes and a wolfish appearance named Grey Wind, a cookie for you if you can guess where this wolf is from, for his ferocious speed, often leaving a grayish blur when fighting on missions. They were walking down the now empty street, enjoying each other's company, laughing and telling jokes when Grey Wind started to sniff the air and growl. They both stopped laughing for a second and looked concerned at the ninkin. Hinomi bent down on her knees and ruffled her companion's hair. "What's wrong, boy? You smell something? It was then, as they were right around the corner, a smell engulfed her heightened senses, and she smelt what Grey Wind was smelling: blood and death. She quickly reached for her kunai holster and glanced over to see Kana had done the same. They saw the Uchiha compound doors were wide open, plastered with fresh blood, and the guards were lying dead on the floor. Kana could see through the doors the dead bodies of men, women, and children scattered across the compound. Limbs and other appendages were sprawled on the ground. The once great flags of the Uchiha cut and tattered to ribbons. Walls covered with fresh blood belonging to the victims, and the streetlights once dawned to give the great clan light were shattered and broken. The place looked like the gates of hell with all of its death and bloodshed. Anger and worry began to flood her mind, and she had a sickening feeling in her stomach. She rushed in, her best friend followed close behind with Grey Wind sniffing the air. They raced past body after body until they nearly got close to Kana's house. They were stopped dead in their tracks when a mysterious figure wearing a black cloak, sporting a brown mask with one eyehole, had just slit another male Uchiha's throat, turned around and faced them, not even paying attention to the now lifeless body of the Uchiha, now fallen on the ground leaking its lifeblood. He glanced over at the snarling Grey Wind and the clenching Hinomi. "You're not supposed to be here, Inuzuka. Guess I'll have to hide your body when I'm done killing you," he said, voice filled with eerie coldness. Hinomi growled in response and charged towards him, kunai in each hand, followed and her trusty Grey Wind close behind. "Go to hell, you monster. I'll kill you for doing this to the village." He stood emotionless and dodged both kunai attacks before activating Kamui as Hinomi's ninkin leapt onto him and sank right through him like he was made out of air. He then Hinomi wrist and shoved her backward, following a powerful axe kick to her face, sending her sailing in the air and slammed into the ground hard. She let out a painful grunt and tried to stand, only for the masked figure to appear suddenly beside her and delivering a kick to her kneecap coated with chakra and shattering it. She yelled in pain as she fell to the ground hard. He then reached for some sort of white spear and charged with inhuman speed towards Kana. She stood frozen in fear, and time seemed to slow down around her. She could only watch the incoming attack barreling towards her. Memories of her friends and clan flooded into her mind. She glanced to the side and saw Hinomi trying to stand up and screaming at her to move. She tried to reach in her pocket and pull out shuriken, but she was too slow. She closed her eyes and waited for the weapon to pierce her, but it never came. She heard a clang and opened her eyes to see a figure also shrouded in complete black clothing deflected the weapon with a kunai. Her eyes widened when her body finally processed what just happened and she saw the mysterious figure. A little bit earlier, Naruto raced across the Uchiha rooftops with one task: save the clan. Arriving at the compound, he adjusted the cloak he acquired moments before when he zoomed into some of the shops and grabbed all black clothing, including a large black cowl. As he got closer and closer inland, he slowly started to get angrier and angrier as he witnessed the sheer carnage of dead Uchihas, murdered in gruesome and violent ways. He clenched his fist in a fury. "Bloody bastards. Damn you, Madara. Please let me save some of the clan." His thoughts escaped him when he heard screaming coming from down below. He stopped and gazed down below to see two females battling someone. One of them was on the ground holding her knee in pain and trying to reach her unconscious dog, while the other stood motionless, not even moving a muscle and staring straight at something. He moved his eyes to where she was staring at and he instantly narrowed his eyes. A man shrouded in black with a white mask was charging at her. He was, however, staring straight at a hole in the man's mask. Even with a different colored mask, he recognized it anywhere. He muttered two words in anger: "Obito Uchiha." He immediately reached for his kunai holster and pulled out a kunai before lunging towards the helpless girl. His legs moved at an intense speed, fast enough to be in front of her, deflecting the spear with the kunai and snapping a roundhouse kicking into the masked man and sending him backward, smashing into one of the houses. He glanced behind him to see the girl was shaking and staring straight at him as to try and say something, but she was unable. He nodded a short greeting at her before turning his attention back to the man who slowly started getting up. Naruto dodged two kunai aimed at him from Obito before zooming towards him. He grabbed the man's wristing, twisting it hard, forcing Obito to drop his spear and blocking the other hand holding a white spear aimed for his chest. Naruto suddenly vanished and appeared behind the man, kunai held in a reverse grip, aimed at his throat. Naruto leaned in and whispered angrily in his ear. Look at this bloodshed and death, is this what you believe is true peace? Look at your clan, your family. You sick bastard, no more. It's over. Obito. At that last word, Obito stood motionless, mostly in shock but also in fear as was his right. The man knew of his goal and more importantly his name. No one knew he still existed. His one visible eye tried to gaze who the shrouded figure holding him in submission was. Time seems to slow before he activated his Kamui and disappeared, leaving Naruto holding a kunai at the air. Naruto, not sensing his chakra, turned his attention back to the two girls. The one who was almost skewered fell to her knees and was wiping the tears from her face. He disappeared in a swirl of leaves before reappearing next to the girl on her knees. He bent down to put one arm under her shaking legs and the other on her back and walked over to the other girl. The girl, now slowly moving again, watched him approach her. She was unable to do anything except watch the man in black carry her to her friend. Kana tried to uncover who the man was currently carrying her. Her efforts were futile as she couldn't see his face because of the hood, and judging by his body build she could feel against her frame he was male, around young 20s and a ninja. She glanced over and saw her friend's Ninken was still unconscious. The other girl managed to stand on one leg and had picked up a kunai and had it aimed at the man carrying her friend bridal style. She knew she didn't stand a chance with her broken leg, but she nevertheless stood her ground. The shrouded ghost did not react in the slightest to the hostility, rather he stopped right beside her. To her surprise, he just placed the girl next to her feet and knelt next to her. His hands started to glow and he moved it over her body. Her body slowly started to recover from the flight or fight mode and he calms her elevated heartbeats. He then glanced up at the Inuzuka girl who had her eyes narrowed at him, watching him like a hawk. He pulled out his headband and she stared wide-eyed at him. He then reached out and gently placed his right hand on her leg. His hand began to glow again and after a few moments she felt better and could move her leg slightly. The mysterious man finally stood up, looked back at the two shocked females before disappearing via Shunshin, leaving a swirl of leaves to dance in the cold bloodlusted air before sinking back to the ground. Hinomi knelt next to her friend and stuck her hand out, which Kana slightly smiled and grabbed before being pulled up. "You okay, Kana?" she asked. "Yeah, just a little shaken up, that's all." "Who was that?" She wiped the dirt from her vest and shrugged, her hands were still shaking slightly. "Dunno. The person had a leaf headband, so must be a leaf shinobi or something. Let's get going though, we have to find your family." Kana nodded and wrapped her friend's arm around her own neck and helped her friend to Grey Wind, who was now finally awake, and bolted towards her owner and started licking her face. Hinomi smiled and began to pet him. They then made their way towards Kana's family. Kana clutching the kunai that the mysterious person used. She glanced behind her at the place where the man was last. She wanted to thank the cloaked figure for saving her life. She would have to find this person later. Naruto was relieved that there was still some Uchiha alive, but was still sad that he didn't save all of them. He planned to make sure he saved everyone. It was his duty as a former appointed Hokage and child of prophecy. He finally made his way to the main head's compound. He jumped on the walls and landed in the backyard. Sneaking through the yard, he finally arrived at the room that Itachi and his parents were in. The room was quite dark, so hiding in there shouldn't be a problem. Itachi's parents were on their knees facing their backs towards Itachi. Naruto crept in closer and waited. He could overhear a female voice talking, which he guessed was Itachi's mom, Makoto. "We already know, Itachi." It was then Fugaku who spoke, softly, voice filled with sadness, like he knew the fate that was knocking on his doorstep. "Itachi, promise me this. Take care of Sasuke." Itachi, already shedding tears, responds with slow, "I will. Do not fear it. This is the path you have chosen. Compared to yours, our pain will end in an instant. Our philosophies may differ, but I am proud of you. You truly are a kind child." Itachi, visibly shaking and crying, now raises his sword and prepares to strike from above. He brings his sword down but is stopped when a kunai comes soaring through and knocks the blade out of his hand. Itachi, shocked, shakily pulls out a kunai and responds with, "Who are you?" Itachi was on alert. Whoever threw it was strong. He had completely masked his chakra and made no movements. Not even with his Anbu training was he able to find his opponent. He was almost like a shadow. A figure finally steps from out the shadows and Itachi narrows his eyes. The figure was shrouded in all black, even covering his face. He held a kunai in his hand. The figure spoke in a gravelly voice. Someone here to stop you from making a mistake. To stop events which should never have transpired, despite having a good cause. Itachi spoke in a shaking yet cold voice. If you know of the cause, then you know why I had to do this. The figure stepped closer and Itachi stepped back slightly. Oh, I do. Danzo has you the choice of having you kill the entire Uchiha clan and sparing Sasuke, or not and allowing the clan to live at the cost of Sasuke's life. Makoto and Fugaku became shocked. They never knew that Sasuke would be killed. Itachi stared wide-eyed. That information wasn't relayed to anyone, not even his companion Madara knew that. How do you know that? The figure, finally fully visible, looked up at Itachi. Itachi took a step back in shock. The only thing visible from the mysterious figure was a large red dot with little black dots decorating it, glowing in the moonlight almost ominously. Itachi knew, however, it was a Sharingan eye. Thinking it was another Uchiha or even one of Danzo's men, he threw his kunai at the figure. It zoomed at deadly accuracy and inhumane speed towards the Sharingan figure. Before it reached the figure, it was instantly disintegrated by surprisingly black flames. He faced the figure again and noticed his eye changed into that of an oddly shaped pinwheel. Fugaku gasped. The Mangekyo Sharingan, the pride of an Uchiha. I don't know of any other Uchiha who has the power. That's because I'm not an Uchiha. Itachi then realized that if wasn't, then he could only be one other person. Are you Kaka? The figure interrupted him. No, was the simple answer given. The figure reached for his cloak before continuing to speak. In fact, I am someone else entirely. He pulled off the cloak, exposing his golden yellow spiky hair and a large blue eye next to his red and black one. Everyone minus Naruto had their mouths agape and eyes nearly popping out their sockets. Fugaku spoke again. Impossible, Lord Fourth? But you died, almost whispering as he spoke. The figure stood perfectly still. What I'm about to tell you stays in this room. If anyone else found out about this village could be in more danger than it already is. I already sent shadow clones after you companion nearby, Itachi, but it seemed he is not here. Can you do me this? Fugaku and Makoto looked at each other with uncertainty before they both nodded. The red and blue-eyed man looked at Itachi, who then also nodded unsurely. The figure sighed. Alright, I don't have much time until Sasuke or the Anbu arrive. But no, I am not the fourth. I am his son Naruto. Fugaku stood up suddenly, fist clenched. You think this is some kind of sick joke? Naruto is 6. The Kyuubi container is in the orphanage right now. Who or why? Naruto interrupted him, activating some of his leftover chakra from the fox. He didn't have enough for his Kyuubi cloak. Instead, he opted out by only changing his eyes and leaking some red chakra out his body. The compound seals flared up at detecting a Biju's chakra. Now you believe me? I am in fact the future Naruto. Time traveled to stop this unnecessary bloodshed and to fulfill a promise I made to my best friend, Sasuke. Makoto piped up at the mention of her youngest. She grabbed his hand, squeezing it. Sasuke? You mean our Sasuke? If you're truly Naruto from the future, then is our boy okay? Does he grow up strong and does he live a good life? Please tell me he is. She looked into his eyes, trying to gauge what she could about her son's future. Naruto looks toward the ground in shame and sadness. In the end he was. But for most of his life, no, he wasn't. Because of the clan's selfish act of the coup and it leading to this. I had to watch my best friend turn into something that I bet you wouldn't even think was your son. So much he was corrupted by the famous curse of hatred, he was willing to destroy the village after he found out the truth. It was at the end, thanks to Itachi, he finally realized what was right. Naruto winced as he removed some of the bandages to show a large scar and hole in his chest. Because I have the fox, this healed, but it always popped up when I faced Sasuke for some reason. This scar was done by Sasuke as he sent a large blade of lightning through my chest when he was 12. I fought my best friend to the death at 12 years old. You don't know the pain it caused him to do this. Fugaku finally spoke after that revelation. We are sorry, but if this is the Hokage's will, we won't be able to defile it. We were willing to overthrow the Hokage. If this saved his life, I'm sure Sasuke will be okay. Naruto punched a hole in the wall in anger, startling the other three. Okay? You think he's going to be bloody okay? His voice almost reaching shouting levels as his hands clenched in anger. Damn you Uchihas with your arrogance and... I just came from a world where everyone was dead. My friends, former senseis, someone I grew to love, even villagers who hated me as a child. All killed. After Itachi kills you, he blames himself for this. Thinking he needed to be punished, he brought the mantle towards Sasuke as his jury. He told Sasuke he killed the clan for power and that if he ever wanted eyes like his he should train and strive to kill him. You know what it did? That kind, happy younger side of Sasuke died that day. He was so much in pain that he snapped. The curse of hatred infected him stronger than before. He turned into a cold, uncaring, power-hungry shell bent on killing Itachi. He was so into power he even became a rogue and joined with Orochimaru. My friends and I at the time fought hard to bring him back. At the end, we had a final battle at the Valley of the End where Sasuke nearly killed me. He removed all ties from the village that day, saying they would slow him down, make him weak. He didn't let them have a chance to speak as he continued on. He wanted them to know the pain they inflicted. He spends 2 years teaming with that bastard before supposedly killing him. After that, he then decided to chase after Itachi and kill him. He eventually did and got his Mangekyo Sharingan after watching his closest bond die before him. He then learned the truth that Itachi did not kill the clan for power, instead he was ordered to. Sasuke, enraged by this, wanted to destroy the village and joined the group called Akatsuki, who were hell-bent on destroying the world. It was only during the 4th Shinobi War he changed, but he was still quite cold, and not like the Sasuke you knew, and he never would. My friend became a cold, merciless murderer because of this. I never want to see my friend suffer like that again. Makoto was in her husband's arm crying loudly while Itachi just stood there, frozen tears forming in his eyes. His brother, how could he do that? Naruto looked at them with genuine sadness and shame. It shocked them to see such emotion on the child of their now deceased close friends. I ask you, no, I beg of you. There has been enough blood spilled tonight. Don't let there be any more. I stopped the masked figure from killing any more Uchiha. There's still some left. I can feel their chakra. It's not a lot, but there are still some alive. Stop this coup. Thrive with what clan you have left. We need the allies. Trust me, the world is at stake. Don't let my friend go down this path even more. Killing most of the clan will hurt him a lot, but having you guys, his parents dying, will shatter him and my history will repeat itself. Stop this hate towards the Senju-type government. The nine-tail attack was not your doing, but you were being played. Itachi stood knelt next to his mother. What do you mean? It's rumored that an Uchiha controlled the fox. It's true, it was an Uchiha, but one that removed ties from the village. In fact, he was here tonight, killing Uchiha children and women. Itachi glanced up at the black-cloaked figure. You don't mean Madara, do you? Fugaku gave his son a quizzical look. What do you mean Madara? Madara died at the valley facing Hashirama. There is no way he's alive. A few days ago a man was scouting the village and I approached him. This was a few days before the coup at Tad and I already had the task to take out the village. The man identified himself as Madara and told me he would help with the clan downfall. Naruto interrupted the discussion. That is true. He calls himself Madara, but in reality, he isn't. Time to spoil the news, Itachi, not even you know this. Madara survived the battle against Hashirama. He was weakened badly, but he survived. The man who helped you was the one responsible for the Nine Tails attack, in anger for not protecting the woman he loved. His name is Obito Uchiha, a student of Minato. He had survived the rocks that crushed his body. Everyone thought he had died, but he didn't. He was rescued by the actual Madara Uchiha. Quote, after seeing their shocked faces he continued on. Madara then made a deal with him. Obito found his former teammates but saw his friend Kakashi Hitaki kill Rin to save the village. Obito overheard why Kakashi did it. She was fused with the three tails into destroying the leaf. It killed him that Rin died. He then left before slaughtering all the mist ninja there, unlocking his Mangekyo in the process. Madara told Obito of a plan into creating true peace. He was disillusioned, didn't know this plan and agreed to help Madara in any way. Madara passed everything he knew to Obito and told him the time to revive him. Obito, working for a group called the Akatsuki, he acts like a newbie but in reality is the one pulling the strings, even the true leader, Pain. The goal of the Akatsuki is to have all 9 of the Biju, but they won't do this for a few years. What Obito doesn't know is that Madara was the one who ordered the mist to put the three tails inside Rin. This is only the surface of what is to come. I will explain everything when I can. But I need to know you will not continue this. Thousands upon thousands are going to die if I do not stop what I came for. Please, I beg you. The room was dead silent before Fugaku finally broke the ice. If what you say is true, then we have no other choice. If we had known all this, you have my word, I will try everything in my power to stop this. I will want those who are responsible for this to pay. Naruto sighs in relief. Thank Kami. Makoto and Fugaku stand up and hug Itachi. They stood there for a moment crying their hearts out. Naruto stood there awkwardly before Itachi told them goodbye. He walked over to Naruto and stuck his hand out. I thank you. Naruto, you saved my little brother from something I would never wish upon him. If there is anything, Naruto shakes it firmly. There is. I'm going to be spying for a little bit, but I'm staying in the village. When you leave here and report to the Hokage, tell him of what transpired here today. Tell him, unfortunately, you will still be branded as a traitor and hunted, but at least the clan is safe. When you join Akatsuki, I want you to relay the info you do to the third that you do me. Everything. We need to be allies here. I thank you that you were willing to do the right thing. Now do it for the world too. Itachi wipes away the tears from his face before nodding. Understood. He waves goodbye and disappears into the night. Naruto turns towards the other two. Makoto, still crying, runs over and hugs Naruto, who visibly tenses up, every signal in his body telling him to shove her off. Fugaku noticed this and stared at him in confusion. It's when he noticed the trauma in Naruto's eyes. Thank you. If we had known about all this. You saved my boy. Fugaku pats him on the shoulder, ignoring the tense body of Naruto. Thank you, Naruto. Your parents would be proud. We are sorry about all this. Hopefully, we can make it right. If you ever need anything, you need not ask. You saved the clan, us and our son, and for that, you are always welcomed here. Naruto, who stopped tensing, looked at Sasuke's father and snorted. My Uchiha offering gratitude? I wonder if the world is ending. Oh, wait. Makoto smiles and Fugaku scoffs. Naruto suddenly hears faint panting and the close yelling of a child. He recognized that voice. It belonged to Sasuke, who was already by the house and running up to the door and into the house. Sasuke finally made it to the room they were in. He froze in place, unable to move. He could only stare into the eye of Naruto, the Mangekyo Sharingan peering menacingly at him. It scared him and he backed away a bit. Naruto turned around and faced Sasuke's parents. He nods one final goodbye and then moves his hand in front of his face, flashing a hand sign, dispelling himself and disappearing in a puff of smoke. Sasuke's eyes snapped to his parents and all the worry and fear inside him washed away. He raced across the room and embraced his parents in a hug, crying loudly. Fugaku, hugging Sasuke, raises his eyebrows. A shadow clone? I didn't even realize. Naruto became strong with them. It amazes me that Minato's son, the Jinchuriki, becomes so strong that he was able to mask his chakra like that to the point where I couldn't even detect him, and to summon the Nine Tails chakra like that. From what he heard, the other ninja said despite Naruto only being 6, showed no signs of being a good ninja nor the battle mind he praised his son Itachi for. He must easily be a Jonin. If only Minato and Kushina could see how their son has grown up. Although the tense shoulders was a bit odd. Naruto would need some help or he would crack soon. Fugaku shook it out of his head, thinking on it another time would be wise, and he smiled, embracing Sasuke. He needed to find whoever was left and they needed to prepare. If what Naruto said was true, then a war is coming, a bloody violent one, of course discreetly. He was a ninja after all. 11 months later. In a small town near the village, hidden in the clouds, there stood a large building in the middle, towering above the smaller buildings down below that were protected by large walls and guards alike. On the outside, it looked like a fortress. This was the fabled home of a wealthy businessman named Wei, who also indulged in more illegal means of extortion, robbery, forgery, and even murder. Wei had currently just changed in his nighttime attire and getting ready for bed. Wei walked over and closed his protected windows before climbing into the soft bed and retreating into his dreams. A shadowy figure lunged on top of one of the smaller buildings and was currently crouching, inspecting the area, noticing the dozens of armed guards and shinobi patrolling on the walls and ground alike. This figure clenched his fist a few times and breathed slowly. The figure looked up at the night sky. It was pretty empty save for a few stars and the peaceful moon shining its light down below. The setting looked almost peaceful, which was ironic considering the violent event that would ensure. Interesting. Count 3 dozen guards on the right and back entrance and a dozen more on the main entrance. A few more, most likely shinobi, are patrolling on the walls. Seems my little scare tactic worked, roughing up a few of his lieutenants for intel. After spying on his compound for over 2 weeks, the coward finally resorted to some more hired men. Shadows are my best bet then. East wall does not seem as well defended. Either guard must be on rotation or drunk. Quick and easy, Naruto. Naruto, standing up, began to make his way towards the east entrance. He had attained a new outfit that had earned him the infamous nickname Black Swordsman across the lands. The new outfit consisted of a large midnight tattered black cloak, and under the cloak Naruto wore black sleeveless ninja garb exposing his muscled arms, large knee-high boots, black matted shin guards, a tabi, forearm guards with 3 small triangle-shaped blades attached to each of them, black fingerless gloves, and a black ninja mask that covered his face, only giving the upper part of his nose and eyes visible, with a red crest on top. Basically Ninja Gaiden outfit of Ryu. He carried a kunai holster attached to his left thigh and 3 large pouches filled with shuriken, tags, wire, and other essentials attached to the back of his waist. He also had a large black chakra katana he had a custom built after completing a mission in the Land of Earth. All in all, he looked like the personification of death, wearing all black with his small red eye as the only visibility. That same eye would be the last thing many a foe has seen. Naruto raced across the rooftop and chakra coated his legs, increasing the speed. He leapt off the rooftop and onto the wall in the compound. 2 nearby guards turned around and noticed the new presence and reached for their swords, but were quickly silenced by deadly senbon needles coated with high levels of sleep-induced ingredients. Naruto, keeping his head down, quietly went over and grabbed the bodies, dragging it into a nearby outpost. He quickly raced across on top of the wall with inhuman speed and stealth. He stopped in front of another guard currently sitting on a guard post. He snuck behind the guard before grabbing and wrapping his arms around the man's throat. The man tried to squirm free from under the grip but was unable to. Naruto squeezed and choked him unconscious before dragging the body away. He then dispatched 4 more guards around the east wall before getting rid of the evidence. Naruto glanced and checked to see if he left any evidence of his existence before he leapt into the building housing the high-valued target. He coated his gloves and boots with chakra and began to climb to the floor his target was on. Finally arriving, he leapt on the ledge that accompanied that floor. He quietly opened the window with the lockpick. Hearing the satisfying click, he placed the lockpick back in his pouch. He then moved his hand to where his large black and red katana was before unsheathing it quietly. He held it in reverse with one hand as he used the other to hoist himself into the large, almost pitch black room. Once inside the room, his eyes immediately adjusted to the dark. He carefully checked if anyone was in the room before inspecting it. Although almost pitch black, he could see the contents of the room. Some fancy paintings of landscape and lords, fancy couches and statues and sculptures. And a case of fancy weapons. Naruto could say this man enjoyed the decadent pleasures of man. He finally landed his eyes on a small lamp located on a small bed counter, and then his eyes then moved onto a large expensive bed and, more importantly, the figure sleeping in the bed. Naruto expertly snuck across the room, making only the faint sounds of movement. Not that it really mattered, the man was snoring loudly and would not have woken up. Naruto then stood right in front of the snoring man. He inspected the piggish and round-bellied man sleeping. Naruto was almost disgusted with the state of the man's health. Naruto then unsheathed his sword and pulled a kunai from his pouch. He then leaned over, placing his hand on the loud man's mouth. The man, now awake, glances over and sees Naruto in all his shadowy ghost-like appearance. His groggy eyes now replaced with fear. He tried to squirm, but Naruto held him firm. With the other hand, he raises the kunai high and whispered, "For the sins you have caused, death awaits for no man, it comes to us all, and tonight it claims you." The man tried to squeak a sound under Naruto's clamped hand. The squeaks ended suddenly as Naruto in a lightning-fast motion slits the man's throat. The man chokes on his own blood for a few seconds before he let out a final raspy breath and went limp. Naruto removed his hand from the man's bloodied mouth and leaned over and grabbing the golden blue ring from the dead businessman's fat middle finger. Proof of the kill. He then wiped off any fingerprints and anything that could give him away. Naruto then slashes the kunai in the air, removing the blood from the blade before placing it back in his holster. Naruto then turns around and climbs out the tower, disappearing into the nightly shadows, leaving the scene of the assassination. Next day, after the event, Naruto collected the bounty that was placed on the man's head. In truth, Naruto was not out bounty hunting, they were all small fish. Naruto had spent the last 11 months, however, spying, gathering intel on Madara, Obito or even Orochimaru, and helping our debts. In truth, he was no closer to finding Madara, or the Akatsuki, and that pissed him off to no ends. He had expected as much, as they were masters of hiding and they did not formulate their plans until he was already 12 years old. He did help some old friends by changing the events for him, such as killing the man Wei, who had caused much distress to the village hidden in the cloud. People knew he was corrupt and bounty hunters were hired to take him out, but they were unsuccessful. He was usually way too fortified and only let his guard down until now. He did not, however, find the ruthless Gato of Gato Industries. To save Naruto, that chance of the mission would have been greatly helpful. But Gato had retreated into the shadows and Naruto, with all his glory and skill, could not find him. He couldn't blame him really. After it became clear someone was taking down businessmen, lords, merchants and even former shinobi, those who were corrupt, hid in fear and did not come out, he was also placed in the bingo book and had quite the hefty fine on his head. Naruto became sort of a myth. After countless tasks of going out, people searched for him. Rogue shinobi searched for him to prove their skill, and some villages send ninja to hunt him, thinking he was a rogue ninja. Naruto always evades them, however, and only trouble he had were highwaymen and robbers stupid enough to rob a ninja. Naruto did not kill them. Despite his good nature and kindness being hardened and war-torn, Naruto never really liked killing. He adapted to the world and thus understood the fundamental aspect of a warrior and ninja: kill or be killed. Naruto was grateful he never had to learn this aspect until the very end. In fact, Naruto was one of the few of Konoha 11 to really never kill. Many civilians claimed Naruto had killed the Akatsuki member Kakuzu or even Pain. However, Pain gave his life to save the village and Kakashi was the one who ended Kakuzu. Pretty much right up to the war, Naruto never killed anyone. He came real close, but that was partial to the fox manipulation into breaking the seal. He supposed after watching everyone you knew die in horrible ways and forced to kill during the war, it became easier over time. But he only did it if it was absolutely necessary. Naruto was now on the road and had currently walked off to the left, heading towards a wooden bar. He spotted a large, beefy, muscled man with a full beard standing guard at the front holding an axe, and a smaller, muscled man with a sheathed katana strapped to his waist. Most likely hired to protect the bar from robbers. Naruto, sheathed in full black, nodded at them both and entered the bar. They eyed him suspiciously, but he paid no heed to it. Walking in, Naruto inspected the occupants in the bar. A few civilians drinking in chairs in the middle. A few more eating and talking. He also noticed a few armed men and shinobi from different villages in the corner. It became dead quiet for a second as they all glanced over at Naruto notching his getup. Before resuming their conversations, Naruto glanced over and saw there was a vacant spot to the far left of the front of the bar. Naruto walked over and plopped down on the seat. An older man wearing all white walked over and noticed the black-clad man sitting in front of him was not a civilian. He gained the nerve and walked over a glass and a cloth to clean in one hand. "What can I get ya, lad?" Naruto glanced up and looked at the man and responded in a gruff voice. "Sake, thank you." The man nodded and retreated to the back to grab a bottle. Naruto turned around to check the occupants, who didn't seem to pay him attention and were instead preoccupied with themselves. Naruto reached down and prepared a kunai just in case. He then reached his hand to his face and removed the front of his mask, exposing his full face, minus the eye he always kept covered in black cloth. Naruto ran his hand through his hair and sighed. Even though he's been here almost a year, he still hasn't gotten used to all the civilians in peace. Although he knew it would change soon, to the average civilian the land of lightning was rough and full of crime. To Naruto, it peaceful compared to the hell he suffered. A few moments later, a young, pretty brunette-haired girl walked in carrying a bottle of sake and a small white cup. She glanced at him a bit fearful until she saw his face. He smiled at her with warmth and kindness, and she stood shocked that a man shrouded in all black and mystery could show such kindness. She noticed he seemed to be around her age. She smiles back at him before pouring the sake into the cup. Naruto nodded a thank you and glanced down at the cup in thought for a few moments. Wondering about his next plan, Naruto felt the lingering look and noticed the girl was staring at him. He wondered if he had something on his face, but he noticed her blushed face and was told otherwise. Seemed he had an admirer. She was currently inspecting his face, noticing the differently shaped scars across. It didn't seem to gross her out or bother her. In fact, it increased his attractiveness somehow. Naruto was not horribly disfigured or looked ugly. Instead, the scars he donned increased his aura of mystery and toughness. Naruto deduced that she seemed to be around his age, young, brunette and blue-eyed. She was pretty and at the same time not too pretty. For working in an off-the-road bar, she was in shape and still maintained womanly curves. Naruto raised the cup and downed the contents, ignoring her lingering looks. She finally gained the courage and asked him in a sheepish tone. "My name is Mei. Where are you from, stranger?" Naruto glanced up at her and replied in a monotone response. From a ways, she could tell he was in no mood to talk, but she pressed on. "I could tell you aren't from around here. I can also tell by your getup you must be some ninja. From which village do you hail from?" She pointed towards the mask laid on the bar table. Naruto was about to respond in a kind tone until the man from earlier walked over, interrupting the conversation. "Let's leave the nice young lad alone, Mei. Come help me with the tables, they need Clea." Just then the doors flung open and a loud brash group of men walked into the bar. Naruto peered out the corner of his eye and narrowed when he saw the tough crowd entering, troublesome shinobi. Or they used to be, as the symbol identifying them to the village hidden in the cloud was scratched, showing they denounced all ties to the village and became rogue. The men started walking to the front of the bar, and the lead man, most likely the leader, called out the man who helped Naruto out earlier. "Oi, you! Bring me a few bottles of sake and anything special to eat." The old man gulped before nodding and went in the back, ordering the food to be made. The men shoved each other and laughed before they took their seats at the front of the bar. With all the seats filled up, the leader was still standing. He walked over and stood to the right of Naruto, who was casually drinking his sake. Leaning his arm on the table, he responded, "Hey, trash, you're in my seat." Naruto, not moving a muscle, replied in a cool as ice tone. "Funny, I don't see your name anywhere on it." A few snickers cake from the group of shinobi at the bar. Everyone else was dead quiet now, watching and waiting to see what would happen. The shinobi leaned in a little closer, and Naruto, with his Trenine's heightened senses, could smell the alcohol and lack of hygiene on the man. "I'm not gonna ask you again, punk. Get out of the chair or I'll remove you from it." Naruto was about to respond when he saw one of the shinobi, a brutish-looking fellow, had grabbed Mei around the waist and was currently getting a little too close to comfort. Naruto could see the fear in her eyes as she tried to squirm free. The old man came around the front and saw this. "Let my daughter go, now." The group of shinobi laughed. "Oh, big words." The leader straightened up and faced the defiant man. "Relax, old man. My mate is just having a little bit of fun. He'll treat her well. I better hope my food is gonna be ready soon. We are getting impatient." The girl screamed lightly as the brute grabbed her again from behind and roughed her up a bit. "Oh, she has a nice figure. Say, boss, can I keep her?" The girl grabbed a bottle of sake and slammed it on the man's head, breaking and exposing all the contents of the bottle on the man's face. "Like hell, you bastard." She tried to run, but the man was too quick and grabbed her wrist, wheeling her back in his arms. "I like her. Got a bit of spunk to her." The man's fellow comrades all laughed loudly. And even the boss smiled, but not in a nice way. Just then the two guards from earlier barraged in, weapons drawn. The shinobi at the bar raised theirs as well. The leader leaned on the counter and a grin formed in the corner of his lips. "Unless you two party crashers would like to be open from waist up, I suggest you return those dull weapons back in their sheathed place and stand outside." The two guards looked back at the old man and back at the shinobi. They knew how this would play out. 2 trained civilians guards against 5 armed shinobi was not a contest. They sheathed their weapons in defeat and closed the bar door. The leader then faced the other occupants in the room, including the shinobi, who all looked down and ate their food and chatted quietly. The leader clasped his hands together and faced the old man. "Well, that settles that. Now that food better be ready or we are gonna have to start entertaining ourselves. And you won't want that. Go check on the food. Your daughter is in good hands, my friend will see to that. A few more snickers went around, causing the girl to squirm free. The leader then slammed his hand on the counter next to Naruto, who did not move a muscle. I'm not gonna ask again. Your butt better be off the chair in 5. Naruto downed another cup of sake before facing him. Or what? Kind of weak having ideal threats coming from a man who smells worse than he looks. Gesturing with the cup towards his dirty ragged brown pants, light blue ninja garb and black boots that were way too big for him. A loud howl of laughter went around. The boss's face became red and he went from annoyed to angry as Naruto continued on. And I'd appreciate if you remove your grubby hands of the nice young lady. Or I will make you. The boss stepped back and squinted his eyes. Why you little? Naruto interrupted him with a hand, placing the mask back on his face before facing the rogue leader. The leader, now facing Naruto, could see the seriousness and sternness in the black-cloaked man. Last chance, he barked. The group of ninjas stood up off the seats and placed their hands on their weapons. Even the brutish man removed his hands and picked up a large heaving axe from Mei, who bolted immediately behind the counter. The leader turned around and faced his group and laughed before he in a quick motion removed a large knife from his sheath located on his waist and brought it down, intended to strike Naruto. Naruto dodged the knife expertly and with lightning fast reflexes grabbed the stationed kunai from earlier and jammed it in the leader's hand as it stuck on the table. The leader yelped in pain and in one quick motion, Naruto with his other hand flat slammed the side of his hand into the man's throat hard. The man reached to grab his throat with the hand currently not stuck to the table, but Naruto grabbed him by the throat and slammed his head hard against the side of the counter, knocking him out cold. The room was quiet when for a few moments after that, everyone was shocked for words after what just happened. A pin drop later before one of the other guys, a Skinner-looking fellow, reached for his Tanto blade and charged at Naruto, who ducked under the blade smoothly before wrapping his arms around the man's throat and choked him unconscious. The body dropped face first and Naruto stepped over him casually. Naruto then popped the muscles in his shoulders and cracked his neck before motioning them forward. Instead of coming at him one at a time, the last 3 all rushed at him. Naruto rolled on the ground, dodging 5 chakra-coated shuriken which missed him and stuck to the wall behind him. Naruto then blocked a punch from one of the shinobi with his forearm before blocking a kick from the other shinobi aimed at his face with his leg. Naruto ducked under the third's grab before kneeing him in the gut. Naruto then brought his elbow down hard on the bent-over man, striking the man in the back of the head and rendering him unconscious. Naruto bolted and slid over the second man's back before ramming his fist into the man's stomach and grabbing the same man who was behind Naruto and flipping him over and landing hard on the table and breaking it before punching him in the nose. The last man, nothing his fellow gang completely wiped out, tried to flash through some hand signs and conjure a gust of wind but stopped midway when a kunai was lodged inside his chest just under the ribs. The man dropped down on the floor in shock, but he wasn't dead. Naruto, looking over the sheer carnage, walked over and forked money from each of the men's wallets. Before placing it on the counter, he looked at the shaking owner of the bar. For the damage of the fight and for their order. He then reached into his own pocket and grabbed a handful of bills and walked over and gently grabbed Mei's hand before placing the money in her hand. And for the sake, he said, smiling at her. Mei, finally coming back to her senses, smiled in gratitude before leaning forward and gently removing Naruto's mask. Naruto stepped back instinctively, but Mei stepped forward before kissing him on the cheek softly. "Thank you," she said as she placed his mask back on his face. Naruto, who was now red in the cheeks, looked over at the tipped bottle of sake laying on the counter, grabbed it before dumping the rest on the unconscious leader's head. It trickled down the man's face and into his clothing. He snickered before walking towards the door and opening it and exiting the building, leaving the bar dead quiet. Naruto now casually walking back to the village hidden in the leaves. He began to take in the scenery, noticing the large trees in a row on each side like a wall protecting the long dirt road leading towards his destination. Naruto makes his way to the front gate and stopped. Naruto noticed the 2 ninja guarding at the front gate were none other than the 2 that screwed with his genin team when he was 12, Katetsu Hagane and Izumo Kamizuki, 2 chunin sporting the standard uniform. Naruto casually walked up to the little outpost where the 2 ninjas were leaning back on a couple of chairs in boredom, chatting. Naruto stands arms folded. Naruto inspected the two. He never really knew these two. Even during the war he never talked with many other chunin and jonin from his time except his friends and senseis. From what he remembered, they were fighters that relied on each other, often attacking at the same time, covering each other's blind spots using weapons long range and close range instead of ninjutsu. Izumo had brown hair and dark eyes. His hair was combed down and covered his right eye. He was wearing the standard Konoha shinobi outfit and headband minus it being converted in a bandana. From what Naruto could remember from the other ninja that he talked with during the war, Izumo was the mature and responsible of the two more than his partner Kotetsu, a tall, spiky, black-haired and dark-eyed ninja with a long strip of white bandage running across the bridge of his nose. He too also sported the same standard uniform. Kotetsu was the carefree and irresponsible of the two, often trying to get out of his duties but at the same time is a loyal and dutiful shinobi willing to die for the village. At first, they continued chatting lazily, not noticing him before Izumo nearly fell out of his chair noticing the large cloaked in black figure standing in front of him. Kotetsu stuffs a laugh at his friend's semantics before looking in a serious tone at the figure. "Good day, stranger." Naruto looks up at the sky, noticing the clear blueness minus a few white clouds and the hot sun glaring down at them, indicating it was noon. "Indeed it is a good day," Naruto replies. Kotetsu looks at Izumo with a raised eyebrow before facing the cloaked figure. Yes. State your name and business, sir." "Oh come now, I don't believe you ask every civilian that comes through these doors what their name and purpose for being here is." Kotetsu replied more firmly. "We do when the figure is armed and dangerous and looks like a rogue ninja." "Now name and business." Now resting his hand on the blade located on his waist, Naruto placed his hands out, calming them down. Relax, I mean you no harm. My name is classified. As to why I am here, I wish to speak to Lord Hokage and relay my report." Kotetsu raised both eyebrows before slightly removing his hand from his blade, noticing Izumo doing the same. "You're a ninja from the Hidden Leaves?" Naruto nods, pulls out his headband showing it to the two. "Sure am. Now as I was saying, I'd like to be let in to report to Lord Hokage." Izumo pipes in. "Very well then. Papers and identification, please. We'll need to make sure you say who you are." Naruto looks at the two before rubbing the back of his head. He knew he shouldn't have left Hokage's office in such a rush without planning. "Very well." Naruto pretends to rustle in his pockets to bring out identification. Kotetsu looks more alert and cautious as he watches the figure. Is this guy serious? No way he's that dumb to walk in the front gate if he's an enemy or a rogue ninja. "Is there a problem, sir?" Izumo replied. "I don't have any identification or papers on me." Izumo deadpans as he looks at his partner. "You're kidding? Sigh. They don't pay me enough for this job." "Sorry, sir, can't let you in then. Please step away from the doors." Naruto thinks for a moment. Wait. Hold up, you can't. I'm from here, I need to speak with the Hokage." "Is Lord Hokage expecting you?" Naruto looks at the two before back up at the sky. "Yes, he is. Tell Lord Hokage his spy has returned and he wants to speak to the old man." Izumo's mouth drops slightly. "Are you sure that's the message you would like to tell him?" It is no surprise the third Hokage was kinder than most Kages of the other lands, but even this. To relay such a message, even an insult. If the Hokage did not know this man, an open insult would result in a fine or worse jail time. Naruto nods. Izumo faces Kotetsu before speaking. "Very well. I'll relay the message to Lord Hokage. Kotetsu, stay here with the stranger. I'll be back momentarily." Kotetsu nods and watches his comrade disappear in a puff of smoke. He turns to face the stranger, expecting a kunai rushing towards him. He was not prepared to notice the figure was currently laying on his back on the dirt road watching the sky. He stared at him wide-eyed until the figure turned around and looked at him. "You got anything to drink out here?" Kotetsu just stared at him with shock. About 30 minutes go by before Izumo returns more hastily than usual. Upon speaking with the Hokage, learned that the third was indeed waiting for his return and told Izumo to let him through the gates. He was still a bit anxious to leave a total stranger alone with his good friend. Although he knew Kotetsu could handle himself in a fight, the aura of the stranger was no ordinary ninja. He wasn't some chunin or a regular jonin. This figure was way more powerful. Besides, they were powerful because they were a two-man team, formidable as they often attacked relentlessly, not leaving their enemy a chance to gain his or her bearings. Running down the street, he turned the corner. He expected an altercation of some sorts or Kotetsu standing and staring at him alertly. He was not expecting them to be having a casual conversation and sitting together in the small wooden outpost. After walking a little while, he was near the outpost and could now hear and see them more closely. He saw the mysterious figure now with his cloaked hood removed, could see the man's chiseled form and the upper half of his face that was not covered in the half-face mask. He was currently having a drink of water and sitting in his chair laughing with Kotetsu. They hadn't noticed him yet and were still continuing their conversation. "I'm serious, it was a hectic fight. Barely made it out unscathed." Kotetsu leaned back and laughed. "Ha ha, oh, man, you're kidding, I know you are. You of all people getting in a fight with an ostrich. It was a ninja ostrich for one, and I'm serious. You should have seen it. The ostrich would have kicked my ass 6 ways to Sunday." Kotetsu chuckled before noticing Izumo return and was staring at the two. "Oi Izumo, you made it. I was just keeping the stranger company. What did Lord Third say?" Izumo, still staring in shock, closed his mouth slightly. Lord Third said to let him in. He's good to go." Kotetsu nods before standing up, followed by the cloaked figure, who grabbed the cloak and placed it back on, including the hood. The figure nodded at Kotetsu, who offered him a wry smile. "You will have to tell me more about it next time. Take care and welcome back to the village." Naruto nodded thanks before walking past the outpost and into the village. "Wait," said a still heavy-breathing Izumo. "Hokage-sama told me to give you this." Izumo reaches in his pocket and pulls out a small white card with some small words on it. "Identification card to let you in should you be stopped again." Naruto took a few steps backward before turning around and grabbing the card out of his hands. "Thank you," Naruto replied in a kind tone before walking away, leaving a still Izumo and a smiling Kotetsu, who walks up standing side by side. "Pretty interesting guy if you ask me." Izumo turns to face his best friend before socking him in the shoulder. "Ow, what the hell was that for?" Kotetsu growled, rubbing his shoulder. "You were supposed to watch him and make sure he didn't try anything, not fraternize and play looky-loo with him." Izumo replied, admonishing him. "I wasn't playing. I watched him and then he began talking and one thing led to another. Besides, this job is boring and I never get to meet any new people." Izumo rolls his eyes. "And what if this new person happens to be an assassin said to kill our Hokage?" Kotetsu walks over and plops back on the chair, leaning back with his hands resting behind his head. He offered a half-assed smile at Izumo. "Then we would have dealt with it. Besides, I could have taken him." Izumo scoffs before joining his friend and taking the seat that was occupied earlier. "Oh sure. And I just happen to be a feudal lord." Kotetsu looks at Izumo. "Really? Me too. What an odd coincidence. Say, which land do you hail from, good sir?" Letting the sarcasm drip of his lips, Izumo snorted. "So what you think of him?" Directing the question to his companion, who shrugged. "A bit of an odd one, I can say. But I like him. He doesn't have some stick up his ass, has a carefree attitude like myself. But something different about him." Kotetsu leaks back, soaking up the warm sun and relaxing. "I agree," as they both watch the figure walk towards his destination. Naruto stands at the door, handing his card towards the 3 guards standing at the door. He nods and lets Naruto pass, who walks up the stairs towards the Hokage's office. Noticing the paintings of the former Hokage and all that they accomplished, he stops and stares at a painting of his father. The legendary Yellow Flash, the 4th Hokage, depicting him fighting the infamous 9-tailed fox. Naruto inclined his head with respect at the painting. He flashed a quick sad smile at his father before walking towards the Hokage's office. He knocks on the door twice, waiting patiently. "It's open," he heard from behind the door. Naruto opens the door slowly, letting it creak slightly. He moved his first foot through the door and then his second before standing at attention in front of the Hokage. The third was currently leaning back in his chair, smoking, with his other hand resting peacefully on a large stack of paper on top of his desk. The Hokage smiled. "Good to see you again." Naruto noticed the presence of the 6 Anbu, hiding carefully, ready to strike as fast as lightning should the opportunity come knocking. Naruto smiled under his mask. "Likewise, old man." Naruto could see a small tick form in the Hokage's face and he could hear the breath suck in of the Anbu hiding. No one calls the leader of a hidden village an old man. Hiruzen stared at Naruto with a calculating look before laughing, shocking the other occupants in the room except for Naruto. "Anbu, please allow me some privacy with my spy." Turn on the privacy seals as well. A small gust of wind goes in the office followed by a small bang as the office door closed. Naruto now only sensing his and the third Hokage's chakra now. Naruto walks over and sits down on the couch facing the Hokage who was watching him with a faint smile. You are lucky I'm so nice. I could have you thrown in the jail for calling me an old man, Naruto. Naruto removed his hood, cloak, and masks revealing his entire face in front of the Hokage. As if, you know those prisons can't hold me, I was running away from Anbu since I was 6 years old. Besides I'm just telling the truth. Say are those more wrinkles? Hiruzen grins. Easy now don't push it. So how did it go? Naruto's smile fades slightly. As much as I could expect. Any information I pretty much gathered was already known to me. Nothing much on Madara or his lackeys. Hiruzen took a smoke of his pipe. So what have you been doing for the last year? I doubt just sitting around being lazy black swordsman? Naruto stared at Hiruzen with shock. How did you know? Oh please. I may be an old man Naruto but I make it my business to know what goes on around me. I know of your little incursions around the lands taking out lords, businessmen and former shinobi. You sure would have surprised me. At your age information gets sometimes misplaced. Smiling with a faint trace of mirth in his voice. Hiruzen rolls his eyes and Naruto continues. And yes I was cleaning out the trash, taking out and helping sow favors for friends. Hiruzen sent a quick sympathetic look towards Naruto. I don't think killing is what your parents had in mind Naruto. Naruto looks at Hiruzen with narrowed eyes. I learned long ago Hiruzen of how this world really is, how twisted and dark it is behind the curtains. Of the pain and anguish it brings. But I also have seen the good and hope in the world. I'm not the little kid I used to be and my life of peace changed the day my father sealed the 9 tails inside me. It's basic shinobi code 101. Kill or be killed. But I also learned long ago from Master Jiraiya that one of the greatest testament of a shinobi is not knowing when to take a life, but when to save one. 2 halves if you will. Hiruzen raised his eyes. When did the brash energetic child I know become so pessimistic and philosophical? Naruto shakes his head. I didn't. I just have a very cynical sense of view on the world. Kinda changes your perspective on things when you're knee-deep in shit during a bloody war. Hiruzen nods. A war one never wished the next generation would face. To see their innocence tainted by the greed of man. The same thing I never wished would show its face to you. I know you did old man. And I appreciate it, but I can't change what happens to me. I can only make sure this Naruto and the rest of the younger generation don't have to see the hell I saw. Hiruzen grimaced before facing his eyes upon Naruto's firm expression. It really did pain him to see the ball of life that sometimes snuck out of the orphanage crying but yet always full of life when he sat down on his lap asking for a story and falling asleep in his arms. Become a complete turnaround of his future self. Even his posture is alert and ready for anything but at the same time tired. He was still relieved though. The kind, humorous, and energetic side was still in him that he knew. He was brought out of his thoughts when he saw Naruto was leaning back on the couch. He shook the thoughts and buried them for a later time. I take it you are here to stay for good then? Naruto opened his eyes and faced the third Hokage. Yeah, I won't find them now. I'll have to be patient and wait till they start making their moves. That's understandable. A lot has changed since you came back. Naruto raised an eyebrow, like? Well, for instance, the situation with the Uchihas has calmed down. It was a rough first couple of months. Eventually, people found out about the massacre of most of the clan and its members. And including the coup, shinobi and villagers began to hate the Uchihas, the once great name of the pride. But as time went by the people slowly began to trust them. And then Lord Fugaku who formally apologized in front of the entire village. I was shocked beyond belief. It was then decided that the Uchihas would stay instead of being outcasts out of the village. Naruto raises both eyebrows in shock. Fugaku-san apologized? The head of the Uchihas apologized in front of the entire village. Damn, I guess arrogance doesn't run as deep as I thought. Must have taken a lot of strength. It did. The Uchiha compound has been looked on more alertly now, council's orders. But it has been pretty stable or as stable as it could be between them. That's a relief. What about Danzo? Naruto clenched his jaw when his name left his lips remembering all the terrible things he did towards Captain Yamato. It's been the same with him. He's kept his presence at bay. But you were right, Root has been massing for a while now. Damn bastard. We are gonna have to fix that soon. We will Naruto, but remember politics. It won't make it easy unless valid proof of his endangerment towards the village is evident. I know. Can I be frank with you, old man? Hiruzen, still smoking his pipe, nods. Through all my years, I have learned to hold life with a positive note. But can I say, I have never attested something as boring and annoying as politics. Politics suck. Hiruzen laughed, letting the rumble in his chest out as he closed his eyes. I'll drink to that. So what will you do now? Naruto thinks for a moment. Well, I guess an official induction into the village would be good. No point skulking around the village like some shadow. Hiruzen nodded. I guessed as much. Question is what? I know you will be a ninja, obviously. But I was wondering if you wanted to do the job I assigned you? Depends on what it is. I hope you aren't assigning me gate duty. Hiruzen chuckled before waving his hand. No, of course not. Would be a waste of your talents. I was thinking more along the lines of, say, Anbu Black Ops? Naruto raised his eyebrows. Anbu Black Ops? You think I'd be a good fit? I mean, I never even became a Chunin or a Jonin, and not to mention they look for only the best of the best. Of course, from what you told me of your skill set and my own digging, since I know you would never lie, Naruto, but seeing proof and hearing are two different things. Your reputation as the Black Swordsman is uncanny. I never thought I'd see it, especially since my report of your younger self, now enrolled in the first stages of the academy, to most show no talent or natural skill as a ninja. Especially in the academic accords. However, your knack for espionage, intelligence gathering, reconnaissance, and hate to say it, assassinations make you easily ready for Anbu. So will you do it? Naruto thinks for a moment. If won't hurt gets me up on the open out of the village as well. But what did you have in mind? From what I gathered, there are many divisions of the Anbu. I hope you weren't putting me in the signaling and communication corps? No, I have an idea of what you would be. The choice will be decided by the head of the Anbu. But you're in? Naruto nods. Good. Now it's time to give you a proper background. The village elders and Danzo, as well as most shinobi, will be suspicious of your new arrival. A mask of mystery will certainly draw their attention. And I don't know how long we will be able to keep this under wraps. Hiruzen said, sighing. But nonetheless, as for now, we will say any traces of your former past was destroyed in risk of tying you back to our village. Plausible deniability. This will include Ninja Academy as well as basic medical records. You were a spy of mine sent deep into enemy territory, and you have only recently came back to the village. We will have to fix it as there are some holes here and there, but it should be passable. Question is, what will your name and appearance be? As I can't go calling you Naruto, and your blonde hair, whiskers, and blue eyes are a dead giveaway, as you are probably well aware. Naruto nodded sadly, running his hands through his vibrant yellow hair. Of course I understand. A henge should be good enough. I'll cut my hair and dye it as well as extra precautions. When I go for a physical assessment, I should be able to pass the basic test. Naruto closed his eyes and concentrated. His body began to shift back to the original henge Naruto wore during the hospital. His hair grew a dark chocolate brown and less spiker, his visible eye changed into an emerald green shade, and his whiskers disappeared, leaving only his original facial scars. 3 small claw marks on his cheek and a small cut in the shape of a blade going vertically down his eye. His body shape grew taller but still kept the same physically fit shape. His tattoos and scars still stayed on his body. He didn't want to remove the memories that he clung onto. Hiruzen nodded, smiling. Better. Now for a name? We should be able to forge and create basic records of your existence. You have a name in mind? Naruto thinks for a moment. I could use the one I had when I infiltrated the Land of Stone during the early stages of the war, when a warring faction had joined ranks with Madara. Kensai Hayabusa. Hiruzen looked at Naruto upon realizing the translated meaning. The Falcon and the Master Swordsman? Interesting name, but I guess that will work. Very well, you will be known as Kensai Hayabusa. Now I'll send your uniform to your housing, but what mask would you like? We have jaguar, hyena, monkey, fox, spider. Naruto thought for a moment. Fox, how fitting. Fox sounds like a good one, Naruto replied, smiling. Hiruzen notices this and gave Naruto, no Kensai, a calculating glance. You sure, Nar Kensai? I mean, yes, it works. I'll take Fox, and I guess you were gonna ask me next for a code name during the field. I'll take Kitsune. Hiruzen nods. Very well. I officially induct you in Kensai. You will be known as Kitsune. Kensai now standing straight with his hands firmly at his side. Understood. What are your orders, Hokage-sama? Replying a crisp military-like tone. Hiruzen instinctively straightened forward. At ease. Give me a couple of days to get the records and everything set, and then I'll arrange an official assignment of your skills. I should be able to get you to bypass most of the test and whatnot. Now for a physiological assessment. I will ask they don't go digging in your head using an interrogation, but they will ask you questions. These questions are designed for experienced ninjas, of course, but ones that aren't war veterans and survived the hell that comes with it. Naruto, I know you won't have it any other way. I saw you would protect the village with your life no matter what. But I must ask, are you fit to be in missions outside of the village? What I mean by that is, can you do missions and won't crack under the stress or traumatic experience? I pull out most ninja within 5 to 8 years in the Anbu with regular checkups, and I'm sure you can guess how a lot of them are in these high-risk missions. Kensai remembered how Kakashi was before he was a sensei, how cold and distant he was. I understand the risk, Hiruzen. I won't put my fellow men and women at risk nor the mission. I will accomplish it to the best of my abilities. Hiruzen sighs. Very well. You can rest in sleep quarters I have here in the office. I'll give you your payment and everything shortly. Right now you need some rest. I can see how tired you are. Kensai nods. Very well. Thank you, sir. Hiruzen hands Kensai the keys and directions to where it is before Kensai bows and exits the room. Hiruzen drops the privacy seals and already notices it's around dinner time. As the Anbu dive back into their original positions, leaving Hiruzen to groan and work at his never-ending pile of paperwork. Kensai's words ringing in his ears. Politics suck. Hiruzen laughs before he began to jot down information about his new arrival. In the famous tower of the Hokage near the office building was a large circular room. A guest room that many a Hokage has found himself resting if he is too tired to go home. The large room was fitted with clay-colored walls decorated with paintings and statues of weapons, shinobi, or famous locations. In the room towards the very back lay a large blue bed with a large window to the right of it. On this bed was the current figure, Kensai Hayabusa, the once great Naruto of the Hidden Leaf and the lone survivor of his village. Kensai awoke when he heard a knock on the door. He sat up straight, panting heavily, noticing the drops of sweat on his chiseled body and bedsheets. He glanced through the window, noticing it was around early morning and most of the shops hadn't opened yet. A second knock came, removing him from his thoughts. He swept his legs to the side of the bed and stood up, cracking his muscles and relieving the tension. He then grabbed the cloak covering his shirtless body and grabbed a kunai which he held behind his back as he approached the door. The knock came again. Kensai called out, All right, I'm coming, calm your horses." Kensai opened the door slightly, letting the light of the office creep into his dark room. He expected it to be the Hokage greeting him, but instead was a smaller but still tall figure fully dressed in Anbu uniform with long black hair and a white and orange mask in the shape of a jaguar. He noticed the intricate brown spots and black whiskers on each side of the porcelain mask. He also noticed the figure was, in fact, she, as he could see her womanly curves. He finally noticed in her hands she was carrying a neatly folded uniform with a large white porcelain mask resting on the uniform. It was detailed with a silver shaded and red streaks on the side, indicating whiskers. Finally, the menacing grinning fox staring straight at him. An almost demonic look. She finally looked at him in the eyes, or tried to, as it was still pretty dark in his room. She spoke in a neutral tone. "Lord Hokage asked me to bring you these, your new uniform. He also asked me to escort you to him when you are done." She finished speaking, handing the uniform towards him. Kensai looked down at the uniform, then back up and nodded thanks before he grabbed the uniform from her arms and took 2 steps back. "I'll wait for you outside while you change," she said, bowing before closing the door, leaving Kensai in his dark room again. A few moments later, the large red door opened up and revealed the Kensai wearing the standard Anbu Black Ops uniform, brand new, ready to be worn in its owner's dangerous job. Kenzie fastened the straps of his new armor before he grabbed his katana leaning against the door frame and attached it to the slot on his back and wrapped his kunai holster on his leg. Finally said, he walked out, standing beside the female Anbu agent. "All good?" she asked, staring at him with a calm, professional look. He nodded and she began to make her way down the large spiraling staircase, with the female Anbu leading the front and maintaining a distance. Not too far but not too close, show that it wasn't a friendly walk between friends. Not saying a word, perfect professionalism. Now out of the Hokage Tower and down the street, the duo began to walk to the Anbu headquarters located on the other side of the street. Walking by, Kenzie began to notice the lingering looks he began to receive from civilians and fellow shinobi alike. He turned to his right to see the Anbu agent paid no heed to their looks and walked straight eyes forward but still scanning the rooftops and streets for any would-be assassin. They continued to walk, between the curious and slightly afraid looks he was receiving from civilians and ninja alike mixed with the awkward silence save for the sound of sandal pounding dirt like a war drum. Kensai let out a breath. So what do I call you? Cat chick seems a bit weird even for me. She glanced at him once, still walking her foot not missing a beat. She didn't offer a word, not even a sigh before she turned back to the street. Naruto groaned mentally. This would be a long walk. After turning down a few more streets, the duo, walking in perfect rhythmic steps, stopped in front of a large circular building with bleak gray walls. Two black pillars with the standard Anbu symbol were carved into the walls. The jaguar Anbu glanced once at Kensai before she walked up the steps and opened the door, Kensai not far behind. The two walked down a long barren hallway with cold metal walls. It wasn't very welcoming and the decor was non-existent, but he'd expect as much. This wasn't a social visit, he was making his way to the location where the best ninja in the Hidden Leaf Village operated. He was sure many shinobi hoping to join the ranks had to walk the seemingly endless hallway, many of them nervous and afraid of what would come. For Kensai, he was ice calm, his moves walking with purpose. This would be the first test of many. The pair of shinobi turned a corner and walked into what would be the main lobby. The room was rectangular and large in size. The main room was completely different from the hallway leading to it. The walls were decorated with paintings of the different Hokage, and a large painting nearly took half the size of the right wall. It was of an Anbu shinobi wearing a leopard mask, sticking his tanto blade in an enemy's chest. Blood decorated the blade. The words, "Death before dishonor," were visible in bright red under the violent painting. On the left side, weapons of all kinds hung like trophies. There was a small section of couches and tables fitted to the side like a waiting room. There was a single bush of plants in the room by the waiting room. The only normalcy, the middle, was a big desk with a computer screen, keyboard and a stack of neat papers. On each side behind the desk were two staircases leading to other parts of the headquarters and a large staircase leading down guarded by two Anbu guards directly behind the desk. He hadn't realized the female agent escorting him had already walked a few paces towards the front desk and was already giving the info the female at the front desk needed. He was too distracted by taking in all the scenery in a building he was never allowed to go. Even the academy trips the instructors sometimes took the young kids on were only to areas lots of civilians could enter, even the top of the Hokage Tower where a close-up of the Hokage faces. This building, however, was highly restrictive. The main lobby was restricted to important officials, and even more so, leading to one of the three staircases was prohibited to anyone that wasn't a member of the Anbu Black Ops. He increased his speed and walked quickly to the front desk. The female at the front desk was wearing the same standard uniform, except she didn't wear a mask or hood. Her face was completely visible. She gave him a once-over with a bored expression, clearly not impressed, before he continued her conversation with the Jaguar shinobi. "All right, everything checks out. Verification accepted. He will be out with you shortly." Right on cue, three figures walked down the stairs. Kensai immediately recognized the middle figure as the third Hokage. The two behind him were Anbu agents with forgetful mask. The third Hokage went around the front desk. The female stood up and bowed her head slightly before she sat back down. The Hokage, however, was focused directly at the time-traveling blonde. The Jaguar Anbu slammed her fist to her chest like a salute before she spoke firmly. "Lord Hokage, I escorted him straight from the tower here. No harm befell him." Sarutobi smiled slightly. "Thank you, Reiko. You may proceed to your squad now." "Reiko," Kensai muttered under his breath. She ignored him before she bowed respectfully at Lord Hokage. "Thank you, my lord. I'll take my leave now." She turned slightly to Kensai and inclined her head before she jogged down the stairs behind the desk. "Ah, you have arrived. Didn't take too long. Guess we can cross. arrives on time, off the list. Sarutobi said with a small grin. Kensai shrugged. You called, I came. But he knew the third Hokage was making a quip about his sensei Kakashi Hitaki, who despite his legendary status was always notoriously late even for important briefings. So it would seem. Well, shall we? He gestured to down the stairs. Kensai nodded and fell in line. The two Anbu stood far enough away not to hear their conversation but close enough to still be able to guard the Hokage. They knew he was briefing him and it would be classified information. Hope you slept well. Sarutobi started off with a casual conversation. Meh, as well as it could be. This place took me by surprise. Sarutobi raises one eyebrow. How so? Well, for one, I never expected it to be so bleak. Cold metal walls, no comfy furniture. Even the atmosphere was cold. The Hokage gave Kensai a quizzical look. I thought you were in Anbu before, I mean temporarily. He lowered his voice before he spoke. The war, he whispered. I did some missions for the Anbu at the beginning of the war. But the old Anbu headquarters was destroyed during the previous invasion of the Leaf Village. The Hokage eyes widened with this reveal and Kensai noticed his expression. It's a long story. Must have been hell. To your first question, it is the Anbu headquarters after all. This place likes to pride itself on the proper military discipline. Although it's also unofficially made to scare off anyone foolish enough to walk in without proper identification. Why do you think there was no one guarding the front door? Kensai turned back around to see the female at the front desk was already helping another man and female with something. He nodded in understanding and they continued on. They finally made it to a large floor almost 5 times the size of the main lobby. There were more staircases leading downwards and 2 more hallways on both sides leading further away. The floor was filled with the same barren decor, but this time it was filled with Anbu. Some were standing talking with their comrades. Some were racing towards the equipment department to grab a new set of kunai or tripwire. Some were racing towards their next mission. All in all, it was a busy place. The Hokage and Kensai walked forward past group after group of Anbu shinobi. They all either bowed or nodded their head respectfully towards the Hokage, but those who spotted Kensai all gave him a curious stare. Those with a mask on also stared at Kensai, who knew they were giving him an equally quizzical and curious stare. They could all tell he was new. Kensai ignored it at first, but even he started to question what was up. Alright, I'll bite. Why are they staring at me? Sarutobi turned his head slightly and noticed their stares. He chuckled softly, clearly amused with himself. You are new. Probably just checking out the new recruit that won't he filling their rank. Don't tell me the great Toad Sage is a little scared of being the center of attention. Kensai scoffed. As if. And I know it's more than me being the new blood. I saw it when Reiko gave me the uniform the first time. My, aren't you the clever one? I'll bite since you figured it out. They are giving you the face cause you are wearing the Anbu uniform. And what about it? Am I supposed to work in bright orange and blue jumpsuit? Sarutobi took a puff from his pipe. No, why it's odd is because you were already wearing the uniform. Everyone who's new around here always arrives in their Genin, Chunin, or Jonin uniform. The Anbu uniform is not taken lightly. You have to earn the position to be in Anbu operations before you can don the uniform. Kensai turned his eyes to look at them again, realizing the special treatment he was getting. So why am I wearing it before I've even been tested? Because Kensai, he stopped walking and so did his guards keeping their distance. He turned his body completely to face the blonde in disguise, lowering his voice ever so slightly. I have complete faith in your abilities. From what you told me, you already joined once. Joining again will be a walk in the park. You are probably the strongest, most experienced recruit to ever join these elite ranks. Not even the gifted Itachi, who was the youngest to join the organization ever, has your prowess. Your Fuinjutsu alone makes you Anbu worthy. There are maybe around 5 Anbu, not including the lieutenant commander, who can use Fuinjutsu proficiently. You are the only one in the village who's a near master at it. Thus, displaying you proudly and getting you recognized right away. He whispered, careful enough not to let anyone hear him. Satisfied with Kenzie's audible click, he trudged along to a large oval-shaped room in the middle of the first floor. A single guard was standing at attention. He immediately looked alert when he saw the Hokage approach and opened the door to him and the younger toned katana-wielding shinobi. The 2 guards that were trailing the Hokage stopped by the door. They knew they weren't invited. The thick wooden door closed and a wisp sound followed shortly, indicating privacy seals were placed. The room was ordinary. A large circular table was in the middle of blackboard on the right side of the wall with scribbles that looked like a battle strategy and a water cooler to the far lonesome left. There was a strange squeak sound that Kensei recognizes as the air conditioner up top. Sarutobi took a seat at the head of the table, a comfy red leather chair as his seat. "Take a seat, Kensei." He gestured to the seat on his right. Kensei obeyed. "So here's how the testing begins." Sarutobi started to explain. All Anbu regardless of stature are tested in 3 stages. This is to test both physical, mental and physiological fitness to determine if you are worth and where you'll be a good fit. "Sounds easy enough," Kensei said confidently. "If only it were that simple. The first stage you will be doing is your medical screening. Before anyone is able to join, they must be vetted. A full examination of your strength, coordination, stamina, speed, and reflexes is required. As you know, Anbu is the best of the best, the cream of the crop. So the higher-ups make sure they take only the best. You should pass with flying colors. You have no history of any physical or mental diseases or illnesses and you're in peak physical condition." Kenzie nodded and the Hokage continued. "Normally after you pass that, they do a physiological checkup. They look at your shinobi record, where you lived, who your parents are, what grades you had in the academy, who your Junin sensei was and how many missions you have done. And if you are Chunin or above, they check your record statues as a squad leader and the comments that have been left by." Sarutobi saw Kenzie was about to speak up again and he raised his hand to stop the interruption. "They also check up on your mental health, how you function, your personality, strange quirks, see if you are fit enough to handle the stress and mental fatigue required in this job. They then ask you if you have been a ninja long enough, more personal questions. Such as, have you ever killed? Lost a comrade? How did you feel? Drilling you extensively. You can see why many of the older, more battles-hardened ninja find this difficult." Kenzie's hand began to sweat and he could feel his heart pumping. Images of the war and his friends dying flashes into his mind. "I know it must have been hell for you. Thinking back, I don't know why I said for you to join. This job is not an easy one and many ninjas suffer post-trauma from this job. But, I have my faith in you, Kensei. I put in a personal order that this part is skipped for classified reasons. It was flimsy and I knew they would suspect something, but I have known the Anbu commander and the other officers for a long time. They trust my judgment." Kenzie sighed a bit in relief. He didn't want to go down that path. His nights were always tormented by the flashbacks of the war. "Least I could do for you." He contained on moving past the sensitive part. "After that, there's an intellectual written test. 50 questions, 35 multiple choice and 15 written response, everything from the effective range of a kunai throw to how to infiltrate a heavily guarded compound. There are also 5 extra situational questions on the back designed to test what choices you would make. This test can be a bit difficult for those who are not as calculating as others." Kenzie groaned, mentally remembering the Chunin exams and how he only managed to pass through sheer luck in the final question. It seemed like forever ago that happened. Finally, the next test is a part 2 of sorts. It's an interrogation test. See how long you will not to give up your village while drilled constantly and tortured. This test proves to be the most difficult and most candidates fail at this part. This part usually takes a few days especially to recover, but I also put in the word to skip this. I knew the minute I saw you in the hospital I saw someone who was loyal. However, this was my last straw to pull. It's already strange that I let a recruit pass both the physiological and interrogation test. My special treatment ends? Oh, what will I do without it? He gave a fake face of worry. Sarutobi rolled his eyes. Finally, the last stage of your test will consist of. The wooden door opened moments before and a figure dressed in a black robe and covered in bandages walked in. He smiled, but his smile was void of any warmth. The final stage will consist of a battle test. Testing to see your combat prowess and skill as a shinobi. Danzo, what an unexpected surprise, what are you doing here? Sarutobi said, already trying to quash the growing headache that was forming. The root founder gave an innocent smile before he spoke, was around. I was curious to see why the Hokage of a village was taking such an interest in a new recruit for the Anbu Black Ops. Especially one with so much black ink. I had to see for myself. Your consideration is admirable, but that's not the only reason. Sarutobi said, eyes not betraying a glint of hostility. Danzo waved his hands and chuckled. No, of course not. I had to come to see this new enigma and see if this new recruit's skills would be better suited for working for me. He stretches his hand out to Kensai and spoke. I am Lord Danzo Shimura, one of the elders of the village. Nice to meet you. That was Kensai's cue. He wanted to say none of your business and slap his hand away, but he knew the ambitious and cunning man that Danzo was. Making an enemy of him would not help his goal one bit. He swallowed his anger and stretched his hand to shake Danzo's. He applied firm pressure, and although he wouldn't show it, Kensai knew his shake was hurting the man's hand. Kensai Hayabusa. He let go after a few seconds and Danzo rubbed his squished hand. Teeth clenched, he spoke neutrally. My, such a strong firm grip. You'll do well here. I hope to see you exceed my expectations in the final stage and come work for me. Your skills would be wasted. He turned to look at Sarutobi, around here. Even if your file is mostly erased. Sarutobi's face was neutral, but Kensai knew the stab that Danzo sent stung. Thank you. I look forward to working here, Kensai said with a crisp tone. Satisfied that he left his territorial mark, Danzo spun around and made his way to the door, opening it and closing it. Kensai growled, I'm going to rip that man apart, armpit to navel cavity. I wouldn't mind seeing that. He stood up slowly. I shall make my way to the officers and let them know the test is starting. I'll have someone escort you to the medical center, shall we? Kenzie got up and they both walked out the door. Sarutobi turned the opposite direction, followed by one of his guards, and began to walk to the officer section. That left Kensai and one Anbu agent wanting patiently to take him to his destination. Kenzie nodded, letting the man know he was ready. The shinobi started walking and Kensai followed. They walked for a good 10 minutes, passing hallway after hallway, corridor after corridor. They finally reached a big white room with a red cross plastered at the top, indicating it was the medical building. They walked through the wooden door to a front reception desk, and Kensai gave the middle-aged woman his identification and told her she was here for a screening. She nodded and gestures to a small area of hard wooden chairs to the right. Kensai walked a few paces before he plopped on the chair. He rested his katana next to him, knowing the sword would poke awkwardly out the hole between the backrest and seat. He waited patiently for a few moments, twirling his thumbs in boredom. Even the war could never take away his boredom and eagerness. He noticed, minus him, the receptionist and two female ninjas sitting a few meters away from him. It was pretty empty. He wondered how anyone could stay sane here. Strong smell of disinfectant in the air, pale white room, absolute silence. At least they could put in some music in here or something. A few minutes go by and he was about to start whistling when he heard light footsteps come around the corner in haste. A young female doctor stood in front of him. Kensai Hayabusa? She asked. Her eyes flashed wide for a split second when she saw the state he was in. A blend of strong male physique and a handful of scars on his arms and face. Kensai nodded, still staring at her. She was very beautiful and easy on the eyes. She was petite, slender, with chocolate brown hair and blue eyes. She had a soft smile tucking at the corner of her lips, a friendly greeting. She wore a white doctor coat with the symbol of the Anbu sewn into the jacket and a white skirt. She held a clipboard in her hand with paper, most likely detailing his short and blacklisted record. She smiled. Great, nice to meet you. My name is Mai Himeno. I'll be taking care of you today. If you please, follow me. The black swordsman grabbed his sword, leaned against the chair, and followed her around the corner down a long hallway. So Mr. Hayabusa, she began. He cut her off. You can just call me Kensai, ma'am. No need for the formalities. Very well, Kensai. Your file seems to be missing some things. Any clue as to why that? Still carrying the sword around his neck, he shrugged and responded innocently. Some things must have accidentally been forgotten. She said, clearly not believing his story. She finally stopped and gestured towards a large room on her right. Inside was filled with medical equipment, a small bed, and gym equipment, weights, a bar attached to the wall to do pull-ups. She closed the door to the room before she sat down on a swivel chair. She wheeled closer to a table with a computer. Kensai sat down on the bed and waited while May began typing in what little information there was on file. It took only a few minutes before she stood up. We will have to update your record before we start. Please remove all your weapons, armor, and clothing and place them on the table over there. She pointed towards a small table placed near the sink. The disguised blonde did as he was ordered and started grabbing and pulling at his straps with his armor. The Anbu vest was much thicker and heavier than his own black padded armor, but nonetheless the armor, his kunai and shuriken pouches, and other knives hidden around his body piled up on the table. She ignored the comical pile of weapons and heavy armor. "All of your clothing as well, Kensai," she repeated. Kensai looked at her with a raised eyebrow. He knew propriety wasn't much of an issue in the medical field, especially for an Anbu member, but well, it was simple: he was male and she was female. He hesitated for a second before he removed the black undershirt under his armor and removed his black padded pants and finally his underwear. He stood still, completely naked and heart-pounding. The doctor raised her eyebrows slightly when she noticed the many scars that littered his body. How could she not? She had studied human anatomy for years like every Anbu Medical Corps member. Some of those injuries she knew no normal man could survive. She traced her finger over a big gash going across his right pectoral only a few inches away from his heart, and then over the large tattoo of a black fox tonto blade in its mouth, grinning menacingly. He shivered and his body tensed. At first, she thought it was cause her hands were cold, but then she saw his face and realized, although she would never question the Hokage's order. She wondered how he was cleared for physiological screening. He was clearly damaged, haunted by something. It didn't take a genius to know that. She would have to decide if she wanted to has a strange reaction to soft human touch, especially from a female. Signs of PTSD? From her notes for now. She ignored it for now before she went to a cupboard and grabbed a roll of measuring tape. She ordered him to stand back straight against the wall and she notched where the top of his head was. Then she moved all the way down to his toe. He measured 6 feet 0. Almost the perfect size for a man of his age and profession. Too big and stealth missions would be impossible, too short and reconnaissance would also be difficult. She made a note in her clipboard that his height had increased slightly over the year. Next, she ordered him to stand on a scale as she measured his weights. He stood on the scale and the numbers went up and stopped. 88.5 kilograms or 200 pounds. He was on the right blend of muscular and athletic, but not too heavy it would hinder his speed. She jotted down the change in his weight before she stood up. She did not once let her eyes falter despite the fact that he was athletically built and had a handsome face. "We will do an X-ray scan of your body. If you please follow me back." He followed her to a back room and she put in the configurations. He stood still for a few minutes while he was scanned. A few moments later he climbed back on the bed. She went back to her chair and typed in info and waited for the scan results. She then told him to put back on only his underwear and pants. He did as he was told. She swiveled over to him before she started touching him all over. Any normal red-blooded man would be happy a beautiful girl like she was touching his naked frame, but for Kensai it was awkward and it felt strange to be touched. He knew it wasn't companionship or even acquaintanceship. It was a doctor doing what she was paid to do. Kensai did his best not to react. He knew she was just doing his job, checking he didn't have any weird bumps or lumps. His ribs cage was good. The liver was the right size, tapping his knee and elbow with a hammer, testing his reactions. Each time she noticed a new scar that was beyond fatal, she asked him how he received it. She had worked in Anbu for many years and seen her fair share of amputees, burn victims and gash marks, but she never has seen so many cuts, bruises and gashes. She didn't need the X-ray to tell her that he had a high percentage of body injuries. The doctor grabbed a stethoscope from around her neck and gently placed the cold metal around his heart and began to listen to his heartbeats. Besides the fast heartbeats from either excitement, stress or her touch. She was satisfied he had no irregular heartbeats. "Almost done. How are you feeling?" She knew they weren't regular hospital patients, especially since how many patients come to a hospital complaining about being burned with a fireball jutsu or cut with a kunai. But she cared for her comrades, especially one so damaged as him. "Fine, I guess. I hope my hands aren't too cold. I was outside quite early, you see. Didn't get a chance to have a cup of coffee," she said, trying to get him to smile. His nodded and she expected as much. She stood up, done measuring his heartbeats. "All done. The cute doctor won't touch your body anymore now. I know you enjoyed it so much." He rolled his eyes and she smiled. At least he's not a complete lost, she thought. "Well, that's all the test. You may grab your gear and head out now. It was nice meeting you." Kensai inclined his head with respect before he walked over and grabbed the armor. He fastened the straps and secured his kunai holster and pouch and katana before he walked out the room. The same guard from earlier was waiting for him. He walked over to join him and they made their way to the written test. Leaving Mai staring at her clipboard the note she made earlier. She scratched it out and sighed before returning to the waiting area for her next patient. The two shinobi finally arrived in what seems to be a classroom. Except for the wooden academy desk, these were white clean metal tables with leather chairs. In the front was an ugly pudgier man with a large scar going down his eye and a big bald head. He was wearing an Anbu uniform designed for his weight. He barked for the recruit to walk over. Kensai stood at attention in front of the strict stern man. Good, you arrived on time. Had you arrived late I would have deducted that from your time limit. I don't know what Lord Hokage sees in a whelp like you. At first glance, you don't seem like much, damaged goods at best. You won't get any special treatment from me? Do I make myself clear? He responded with loud authority. Yes. This seemed to anger the man. His eyes narrowed as he spoke. Yes, what maggot? Yes, what? Yes, sir. Kensai said, teeth clenching. Good, don't think cause the pretty doc was all over you that it was gonna be this easy. You have 1 hour to complete 35 multiple choice questions and 15 written response. There are 5 additional questions at the back you must fill out. You will get no breaks of any kind, including if you are dying on the floor. If you run out of time before the questions it will not look pretty for you. If you speak at all during the test except to tell me you are done you fail. This room is fitted with seals designed to stop you from cheating in any manner. Less you are a fuinjutsu master these seals are impregnable. There are 6 cameras in this room that will watch you. If you cheat you fail. Do anything I don't like you fail. That clear whelp? Near fuinjutsu master more like it but he knew cheating would not look good on his test. This wasn't like the test he got during his chunin exams where it was about leadership skills or gaining intelligence. Anbu already expects that of you. This is about pure knowledge-based questions, yes. He finally responded. Yes? What? Do I have to beat it out of you? It's yes sir or no sir. Kensai thought he had grown out of his immature pranks but if he made it in he was going to prank this man so hard until he quit in early retirement. Yes sir, he shouted with a tone of annoyance. Good, all fired up. Means you are ready for your test that started 5 minutes ago. Better get ready, he said before he grabbed a book from his drawer. Make out paradise. Oh great, the creepy old bastard is a pervert as well. He ignored the scene that wanted to make him hurl before he zoomed into his desk. He placed his name down carefully to use his code name and not his real one and sped through the questions. While this was difficult, even more difficult than the advanced questions he had received during the chunin exams. Many of this stuff he had already learned. Effective range and force needed to kill a full-grown male shinobi, questions on human anatomy, advanced combat battle strategy and tactics, signaling and communications questions, political and historical questions on the 5 great nations. All important things an Anbu member would need to know in order to infiltrate or assassinate. 16 minutes had gone by and he completed the second last multiple choice question. It was on the Battle of Canopy Bridge, in which the Leaf Village was tasked with destroying the bridge cutting off the main supply line to the Stone Village. It was one of the key battles which ultimately led to the treaty between the two countries. He turned his attention to the question right below it. A medical question on the proper technique of resuscitation on an ally. All Anbu were required to know basic CPR techniques regardless if they were medically qualified or not. He answered question 10 seconds later after scanning through all the answers. Hope you are nearly complete, airhead. You got 39 minutes, better sped through. I hope your intellectual skills are better than your military mannerisms, he said, licking his thumb before turning the page in his book. Kensai glanced up once and saw the ugly pig-headed proctor grinning at him with a few missing teeth in the front. Kensai narrowed his eyes before he turned back. He knew best to ignore him and continue on. He mentally groaned. Suddenly being touched by the hot nurse didn't seem so bad. Beats the current view now. He saw glancing up once more at the man clearly developed in his book, but not enough that he couldn't see the young black swordsman staring back. 20 minutes had gone by and he finished his last written response question. The battle at the Valley of End and what its significance was. Kenzie wrote down it was the final battle between the recently appointed first Hokage Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha, who was angered Hashirama was chosen and planned on using the 9 tails to exact his revenge. The battle ended with Madara being slain and the 9 tails sealed inside Mito Uzumaki. He wanted to include, P.S. Madara survived and is currently amassing a massive army of Hashirama cloned things and become the giant 10 tails of freak of nature. But he decided it would not sit well, even if it was the truth. He turned the page onto the back with 5 questions. He glanced at the white clock resting at the upper left corner beside the blackboard. The bigger hand pointed to 11:52 had 8 minutes left. He ignored the annoying comment of the proctor saying he had 8 minutes left. He sped through the first 2 within 2 minutes. They were questions regarding how to solve the situation of a squad of shinobi that had their supply line cut off and they were heavily outnumbered. They had to get past the massive force that surrounded them in order to group up with the rest of their unit. Rather than run through the hot open desert, the quickest route to the ally on the eastern side, which would no doubt make them highly vulnerable, Kensai wrote down that the squad call for a temporary retreat back through the large forest on the western end of Konoha. Here they would lie in wait, scouting the area for the large group of shinobi that outnumbered them. Using a simple hit-and-run tactics, they would strike fast and retreat deep into the forest that provided natural cover, chipping at the enemy force, causing them to run back. In the meantime, one of the squad members sends a sealed message towards the larger force to advance through the rear, effectively cutting off the large force's way of escape. They would be confused and trapped in a forest. Almost all active duty leave shinobi memorized the ins and outs like the back of their hand. Home turf advantage. He sped through another one about supply lines and stalemates before he arrived at the last one. He was put in a situation where he and a squad of 6 members had to transport valuable intelligence back to the village. They were ambushed and half the team is killed. One is severely injured. A female shinobi, she is unable to walk herself. Kensai knew this was a difficult question. There were 2 options, each with repercussions. Leave the female shinobi behind, buying some time, but also leaving a comrade, especially one that was a female, to most likely be beaten, raped, tortured for information and then killed. Or carry the injured comrade and risk being ambushed again and killed due to the extra baggage. Kakashi's word from the first exercise at training grounds 3 rang in his ears. Those who abandon their comrades are worse than scum. He smiled and read further. One of the Konoha shinobi was a male Hyuga and the other a shinobi with earth affinity. An idea sprung up into his mind. His writing utensil hit the paper with superhuman speeds and he began to put a plan to paper. There would be a small plateau of rock formations that could provide a good vantage point for the enemy ninja. Having them make their way there, the earth type depending on the level of chakra he still had left would create a 6 rock clones. He would send them deep into the forest. 3 of them would act as voice diversions, calling out to each other as if seemingly lost, while the other 3 would cause commotion, twigs breaking, bushes shaking, footprints seemingly heading in a circle. Assuming the enemy team had no sensory ninja that could see through the diversion, it would cause a commotion and split most of the ninja apart. They would be all over the place running deeper. Rock clones were not like shadow clones and had only a limited effective range, but assuming it would work fully, would give the team of 3 enough time to carry the injured teammate back to the village. The Hyuga in front with his Byakugan scanning to see the enemy if their movements changed and they realized what happened, while the earth type, which meant they naturally had to be big and muscled, carried the female. In the off chance the hoax was revealed, they would be close enough to Naka River, which held a fully guarded outpost 24/7. The ink formed the final word just as the clock hand reached 12. He placed the writing tool down and breathed. The old man had placed his book back in his desk and had made haste, determined to rip the new recruit a new one. Aha, tough luck, whelp. Anbu only accepts the best, and you weren't I? His mouth gave an audible click as it closed and his eyes widened. All the questions were filled in detail. He turned his eyes towards the Cyclops shinobi who was grinning at him. What was that about only accepting the best? He said with an amused expression. The proctor scratched the back of his head in embarrassment despite not having hair. He regained his composure moments later. Yeah, well, that won't mean squat if the answers aren't up to standard. However, you completed and I didn't have to rip you a new one. You are finished, head to your next and final test. Kensai handed the paper to the proctor, who held it, crunching and crumbling the paper slightly in anger before he bowed slightly, some of it respect, some of it mockingly. This was Naruto we are talking about. He made his way to the door and stopped slightly when he heard the proctor snicker to himself. Rookie may have passed this test, but what's waiting for him down there is far worse. He's gonna need a doctor after this if they don't completely batter him to pieces, that is. He snickered before he grabbed the same book he read earlier and found his page. What's waiting for him down there, Well, this is the battle test. Wonder what they will throw at me. Kensai, after sitting in that chair for so long, was happy he was about to test his mettle against his new comrades. He closes the door and joined the same Anbu who became his unofficial tour guide. He still hasn't been able to strike a conversation with the silent shinobi. He was beginning to wonder if everyone here was mute. The duo walked for a good 10 minutes, passing a few corridors and stairs before they landed across a larger archway with two tanto blades crisscrossing each other. A small crowd was standing near the entrance. He recognized a few of the people. The third Hokage, the commander of the Torture and Interrogation Division Ibiki Moroni, and his heart-choked slightly Inoichi Yamanaka, and a handful of officer-ranked Anbu. He wondered where Danzo was, but the snake would probably appear anytime, like a creeping shadow. He noticed there were 5 regular Anbu, 3 men and 2 women, all dressed in the standard uniform. Sarutobi saw Kensai approach. "Ah, there you are. Hope the written test wasn't too boring." Kensai nodded a greeting before he glanced at the other shinobi, who were all giving him the same curious stare. "What's next?" he said, trying to ignore the stares. Sarutobi smiled. "Well, we won't know the results until they come in, but if you are here it means you are probably gonna pass. This, as you already probably know, is Ibiki Morino. He's the head commander of the Torture and Interrogation Division, or TID. He's also agreed to be one of several to evaluate your skills in battle today." Kensai already knew how the sadist Anbu interrogator looked. It's a face he'd never forget from the first rounds of the Chunin exams. The imposing man stood over 6 feet in length, with a rugged head covered in scars and burns indicating the many years of interrogation he serviced to the village, only hidden under his forehead protector. He spoke in his usual stern voice. "Pleasure to meet you, Hayabusa. Hope to see what you are made of. Might even see if have what it takes to deal with the most important tool in a shinobi's arsenal." He drilled his head with a finger, indicating he meant the mind. Sarutobi coughed into his hand, getting Kensai's attention. "Ibiki is also many times the one who gives mission briefings when I am not there. So even if you don't join the Torture and Interrogation Division, you'll see him many a time." Kensai nodded and he waited for Sarutobi to introduce someone he already knew very well. "This," he gestured with his hand to the ash-blonde ninja with a long ponytail, "is Inoichi Yamanaka, head of the Intelligence and Reconnaissance Division, and also evaluating your skills today." Inoichi stretched out his hand to shake. "Ignore the big oaf named Morino. He's a softie under that hard exterior." He ignored the annoyed look he received from the leaf interrogator before he continued. "Glad to have a new member serve the ranks of our best division. Look forward to what you are made of, Hayabusa." He offered a small smile. Kensai tried to steady his emotions. He was a shinobi, for crying out loud, but he couldn't, no matter. He had grown close to the ninja. He often spent many nights within the tent devising battle strategies. The man had grown to become sort of another mentor. The images of the man's brutal demise at the hand of the 10 Tails beast bomb and the single charred, bloodied leg that was found buried beneath the Allied Nations HQ. Before he died, he relayed one more strategy about the 10 Tails and for Naruto to look after his daughter before he was killed. He shook the image out his head and stretched out his hand to shake. He noticed that his arm was shaking slightly. He tried to steady his arm but failed. Inoichi noticed the strange sighting and ignored it, believing the ninja in front of him was nervous. If he had seen his eyes, however, it would have told a different story of regret, pain, loss, and sadness. He shook the one-eyed ninja before he turned to Sarutobi. "Very well, let's get started, Lord Hokage." "Yes, let's." He turned towards Kensai and started to explain. "Alright, just like before, the test will be split into 3 stages. The first stage is taijutsu only. All Anbu, regardless of division, must be able to adequately fight in close quarters combat against a variety of opponents. This fundamental aspect is vital to the survivability and effectiveness of a shinobi. Next will be your specialty fight. For those shinobi who possess special skills like genjutsu, kenjutsu, senjutsu and so forth, to see how well you can perform. Since you are not up to standard for the most common genjutsu, we will be using kenjutsu." But Kensai knew the Hokage wanted to say senjutsu. To see a battle with one of the most difficult shinobi arts to master and perfect would truly be entertaining. Finally, a battle of the most common shinobi art, ninjutsu. The first battle will be a 2-on-1, second will be a sword duel, and finally, a 1-on-1 to see you fight effectively. We will be in the spectators' box over there. He pointed behind him to a large metal box built into the side of the wall close enough to spectate the battle. Are you ready, Kensai? The blonde time traveler nodded. Good. If you gentlemen follow me to the box. He began walking with Ibiki, Inoichi and 2 Anbu officers trailing behind towards the stairs leading to the box. That left him and the Anbu from before. One of the Anbu approaches him. Kensai felt as though he knew him from somewhere. He was tall, lean and muscled, and he had a green porcelain mask of a cat with red intricate markings and wearing the standard Anbu uniform. He adjusted the chakuto attached to his back before he removed his mask, revealing the short brown-haired black almond-shaped eyes he knew. Hello. My name's Tenzo. I'm a member of Squad Row. I'll be escorting you down to the arena. Kensai smiled under the mask. Tenzo looked much younger around his age, but he could never mistake that face. Captain Yamato X Root and the famous wood release ninja. Nice to meet you, Tenzo. Name's Kensai. He gestured to the large staircase leading downwards and the two walked side by side. He ignored the last looks from the group that had watched them. The pair had walked down a long flight of stairs into what seemed like a stadium of some sorts. There were rows and rows of seats all facing towards the large circular arena flanked by massive walls. The arena was simple enough. It was flanked by water on all sides like a moat. One side was covered in a thick forest with a small river on the right and a large formation of rocks on the left. In the very front was a small patch of desert sand. The arena would test the physical prowess of a ninja in many different environments. Tenzo noticed the looks towards the arena and began to explain. We usually don't use this as the official test. It's much blander. This area is usually used as a sparring ground, or more often we have friendly tournaments between squads to strengthen bondage and keep up morale. The fox-masked ninja nodded and the two continued to walk down the flight of stairs for a few moments before Tenzo struck up a conversation again. By the way, I know I spent most of my time outside the village, but I can't say I've seen or heard of your name before. Don't take it personally, we get many famous ninjas around here. He tried to sound apologetic for his bluntness. Kensai's right eyebrow raised slightly. Wow, is this the same brooding and serious Captain Yamato that used to admonish me for eating loudly or threatened to bury me in a wood coffin when he woke him up during missions? He guessed the switch from Anbu to Junin must have been quite big. I recently came back to the village. Was on a personal mission for the old man, so my records down to the academy were destroyed. Tenzo with his face mask moved to the side, widened his eyes. Old man? Damn, he must either really know the Hokage well or does not care about repercussions one bit. Almost reminds me of someone I know. Ah, must have been quite the mission then. You'll have to tell me all about it sometime. That's if you pass, that is. He said with a slight grin. Who says I won't? Say, you said you are from Squad Row? Isn't that the same team as Kakashi Hatake? It was time for Tenzo to raise his eyebrow. That is, Kakashi is the squad captain, or will be for the moment. I hear he's being discharged and placed into Junin sensei duties. What's with the interest in him? Ah well, I do my homework, like to know some of the faces. Especially one so famous. I'm curious though, what's the famous copy ninja like? Tenzo chuckled. Where to begin? Well, you probably won't find anyone as late as him. Even in important briefings he's always super late. Also very laid back and carefree, spends his time reading that damn book. That's interesting, not what I expected from the Sharingan no Kakashi. Oh, and what was that? He inquired. Well, from what I gathered he was very reserved, quiet even. The book was new to me. Never knew he read. Must be very educational books. Also heard he's a massive pervert, he groaned mentally. Why Jiraiya wrote those books will always be a mystery to him. Tenzo gave a snort before he sighed. You have no idea. He turned to a door leading to one end of the arena. Go through this door and make your way. Instructions will go on from there. Good luck. Hope to see you again someday. He said before walking back up. Kensai smiled, remembering the fond memories of the many nights camping out in the wild. He opened the door and walked down another flight of stairs into the arena. It would take a good few minutes to arrive in the middle of the arena, where two Anbu shinobi were waiting for him. A larger broad-shouldered man sporting a brown porcelain mask of a bear and a slender Anbu female wearing a bird mask. The both nodded a respectful greeting and he returned it. Two speakers booked through the arena and Kensai recognized the voice as Hiruzen. See, you all got acquainted. Very well, Bear and Sparrow will be your opponents. The fight goes until you admit defeat or too injured to continue the battle. All arts are forbidden to use except taijutsu. Kunai, wires, and shuriken are allowed. Good luck. Begin. Immediately as those words left, the three shinobi got into a battle stance. Bear got into a more offensive stance while Sparrow got into the crane stance. Kensai steps 1 foot forward and stretched his arm out like a tiger claw. He waited patiently, scanning the enemy movements for any weaknesses. A normal shinobi would normally wait. Scan the unknown enemy before they try and find the weakness. Maybe they leaned on the left side of their hip to do an injury. One leg was slower than the other. Which side they favored, all those things had to be taken into account. However, seemed they picked one member who was as brash as he was in his youth. Without warning, Sparrow launched a flurry of shurikens his way and sped towards him at an intense speed. Kensai dodged the shuriken with ease before he dodged a leg intended to collide with his face. He managed to intercept a kunai meant for his throat before he grabbed her wrist, twisted it hard and pushed her back, and simultaneously snapped a back kick to her groin, sending her falling to the ground. His moment of victory was short-lived when Bear grabbed him in a powerful headlock by encircling his arms under Kensai's armpit and securing his neck. He began to squeeze hard. Sparrow pushed herself up, ignoring the pain from earlier. "Oh, you're gonna get it now," she growled before darting forward, snapping a forward kick into his groin. He managed to lift his right leg, blocking with his shin before in a flash shot both legs forward like a cannonball, pushing her back. He then snapped his head back, ramming the full force of the back of his head into Bear's face. The mask smashed and a sickening crunch seconds later, indicating his nose was broken. He then locked one of Bear's arms into a hold and with his other hand grabbed Bear's fingers, snapping them before he drove his arm back, elbowing Bear into the face, sending him staggering back for a few seconds. The momentary disorientation gave enough room for him to leap off the ground, rotate his body 360 degrees and bringing the ball of his right foot into Bear's head, sending him flying backward. He turned his attention and saw Sparrow throw 4 kunai at his face. He rolled around, dodging all 4 nimbly before he pulled out a kunai of his own and darted forward. The two became a blur of slashes, stabs and kicks. Inside the box, the group of older shinobi watched the fight through a large TV screen with cameras hooked all around, giving them full access to the fight. His techniques are wild and brutal, but they are executed flawlessly. He never falters or lands a strike too early or late, Inoichi said with a morbid fascination. His fighting style is very wild. All over the place. At first, it looked like he was getting into the Hyuga fighting style, but then he launched a brutal fury of kicks, punches and holds. It's like he's mixed academy level moves, Uchiha fighting style, Hyuga fighting style and some I never recognized. It takes real skill to be able to incorporate them all in one style and switch to one that he needs. Ibiki said, clearly impressed. Sarutobi watched, smiling. Although taijutsu was far from the most difficult art, it took a certain level of strength, speed, stamina, and discipline to move and adapt that quickly. In almost no time he immediately adapted to Sparrow's hyper-quick attacks and Bear's slower, strong ones. He disarmed Sparrow first, giving himself enough time to break through the hold and disarm. The Anbu knew they should attack at the same time, but somehow he broke through their plan and caused them to angrily lash out. He watched as Kensai sent a powerful knee into Sparrow's groin, slamming the side of his palm into the nape of her neck, and ducking low and sweeping her legs from under her. Moments later Bear rushes forward, sending a powerful right hook that hit Kensai in the face before he snapped a kick into his calf. The punch landed with a direct hit and his cheek was bruised, but he knew the real move was coming next. He moved his leg, dodging the kick that would have struck a painful spot before sending a high kick to his face and in quick succession a low kick to his stomach. With the man temporarily bent over, he grabbed his opponent's arm, stretching it out before he leapt off the ground and wrapped his legs around the man's arm like a monkey. He then used the force of his body around the man's arm and brought him rolling to the ground. He wrapped both legs around his arm and brought him into an armbar. Bear yelled out in pain as his arm was being snapped. He heard the battle cry of a female ninja and saw Sparrow. She dived forward before she brought her leg down like an axe intended on striking him in the face. He let go of Bear's arm before he spun around her kick like he was breakdancing before he sent a low kick called the serpent strike directly into the weak side of her kneecap. He then pushed off the ground with his other leg and struck her in the side of the hip. She groaned in pain but expected it. She brought her arm around his leg and used her right elbow down on his knee, striking him hard, but he was lucky enough to move his legs slightly out of the way. A few more inches forward and she would have broken his kneecap. The blow still hurt and the blonde shinobi knew there would be bruising on his knee. With her arm still wrapped around his leg, she intended to fall to the ground, snapping his leg, but he was quick and managed to wiggle free. The minute his leg was free, it snapped like a viper to her head and immediately sensed the incoming danger and flipped off the ground, and Black flipped over Bear, who was about to grab the slippery ninja in a bear hug and crush him. Now behind the larger beefy man that towered over him by half a foot and much heavier. He launched a round kick to the side of the man, but he sensed the attack and ducked under it with unexpected speed before he twisted his body around and delivering a powerful uppercut that sent Kensai up into the air. Kenzie landed on the ground hard before he rolled to the side, just barely missing a powerful downwards punch that sent a mini shockwave. Kensai bolted forward, sending a flurry of punches into the beard chest. He knew the man had thick muscle and bone and regular punches weren't gonna do anything. He sent a surge of chakra and into his hands, increasing the power behind his attack. He sent a right hook followed by a left hook into the man's stomach and repeated before he rolled back and darted forward, delivering a backflip kick that sent the larger shinobi into the air before he turned 90 degrees to the left and slammed the ball off his foot down onto the man's ribs like a hammer, sending him to the ground hard. The force knocked the wind from out of him and his head the ground, knocking him unconscious. With one opponent down, he snapped his head around to block a kick aimed to the right side of his face with both forearms before he dropped them and pushed away an elbow strike to his upper chest. He ducked under her fist and sent a powerful tiger fist, which was a deadly strike with his pointer and middle finger's knuckles hitting a precise pressure point, armpit, nape of neck. He struck her in the throat. Not enough to crush her windpipe or block her airway, but enough to get her to gasp for breath before he twisted around and sent a reverse roundhouse kick into the left side of her face, knocking her down as he returned his leg back around and his fist aimed in a kata. The fight was over and his opponents lay both unconscious. A team of Anbu flashed into the arena via swirl of leaves carrying stretchers. They immediately went to work, one of the male Anbu medics carrying Sparrow and the other 3 males carrying the much heavier Bear onto a bigger stretcher. They were wheeled off to the side. Sarutobi stood wide-eyed, a grin forming in his face. Sparrow and Bear were by no means pushover shinobi. He had seen their record and knew they were both exceptional shinobi, but Naruto no Kensai has taken both out with minimum effort and by barely using his kunai and shurikens. In the corner of his eye, he saw the 2 high-ranking shinobi write down their evaluation, and Ibiki and Inoichi. It didn't take a genius to know he got high scores. He'd be lying to himself if he said he would be shocked if Kensai got anything below high Anbu, exactly as he had stated a year and a half before. He had combined both strategy and sheer destructive blows to swiftly take out 2 opponents, each with different strengths or weaknesses. Sarutobi realized he was still thinking about the fight that had long since passed. He regained his compare and walked over, pressing a button and speaking into the microphone. Kensai wins the fight. Good job. Kenjutsu will begin next. Right on cue, Kensai turned to his right and saw a shinobi had flashed with high speeds into the arena. He was carrying a large katana strapped to his back with a blue handle and a wider square-like design for his guard. The sword-wielding Anbu wore a mask of a grinning monkey. That was quite the fight. I'm impressed. You gave Sparrow and Bear quite the thrashing. Kensai raised his eyebrow behind the mask. You saw that? The man removed his mask for a moment, fixing the long hair he had tied in a ponytail before he grinned. He was chewing on a toothpick that reminded him slightly of the Chunin Gemma. Yes, and I wasn't the only one. He pointed with one finger behind Kensai, who turned around and indeed noticed there were around 9 Anbu that had most likely come to watch the spar. A few of them had their mask hanging to the side and he could see a few shocked faces, one of them being Tenzo, who stayed behind to watch. Kensai smiled. Well, it would seem so. The monkey ninja unsheathed the beautifully crafted blade with a bluish hue before he twirled it in glittering arcs. However, He grabbed it with a deft move before he pointed it at Kensai definitely. We will not be speaking the dance of fist. Now we let our blades do the talking. Kensai's face contorted to a look of ice calm and he unsheathed his sword holding it in a reverse grip with his right hand grabbing the pommel and his left a few centimeters above his right. It was an unorthodox method that would leave him wide open but this was perfect for the move Kensai had in mind. Monkey noticed the weird stance but did not comment on it. He took his stance and they both immediately began circling each other. Both scanning the other for weaknesses while treading carefully. The air was thick with killing intent. The deadly skill that often left many inexperienced shinobi immobile. It was quiet, save for the sound of sandals hitting the dirt, slight breeze from the water and the breathing of the two shinobi. Kensai could feel the sweat droplets slide down his face. His hands were slightly sweaty from the warm air. He watched the monkey Anbu with calculating eyes. His movements were fluid, precise like a master. Kensai's eyes darted to Monkey's right foot which had steeped slightly too far to the right. It wasn't much but it gave him the opening he needed. Kensai lowered his body into a crouch like he was ready to pounce before he charged forward at intense speeds and kept up spinning sideways and slamming his blade now fully charged with lightning down on the Anbu shinobi kenjutsu art. Storm Rush. He brought his blade above to block but the surge of lightning still sent a jolt of pain through his body and he took a few steps back. He raised his head just in time to see a downward slash coming from the fox masked shinobi. He dodged out the way before he slashed sideways in rapid succession. Kenzie parried each strike before he broke his guard and hit him in the face with the pommel of his blade. Monkey Nose broke and blood poured from his nose but he ignored it. Monkey brought his blade towards him and spun it around before his blade began to glow bright red like fire. Kenjutsu art. Inferno slash as its blade screamed like the inside of a furnace before a crisscross of pure fire chakra barreled towards the shinobi. Kensei's body flickered before he disappeared and reappeared above the shinobi. Monkey turned his head up and saw the intimating time-traveling blonde spinning sideways and bringing his blade down with a powerful strike. Monkey barely had enough time to dodge out the way but the tip of the blade still made contact and a small gash formed on his forearm. He grunted in pain before he tried to backhand the new recruit with his blade. The strike failed and the shinobi just rolled under the blade nimbly before kicking him hard in the stomach sending him skidding a few feet backward. Minutes earlier, two female shinobi dressed in Anbu uniforms were walking side by side. They had just returned from a mission to the Land of Grass and were intended to give their report to the Hokage. The female shinobi with brown hair tied in a ponytail and the distinguishable Inuzuka fangs painted her cheeks in purple. She lightly patted her large grayish smoke-ish ninkin before she turned to her companion who was staring off into space. She couldn't see a lot of her facial features as it was covered in a light thin scarf that covered the lower half of her face. She had long black hair that flowed freely and black eyes that had a hint of softness buried under an exterior of toughness. She sported the same uniform as her companion except she had long fingerless black gloves that stretched the span of her arms covered in silver padded metal and everything minus her vest was a dark shade of midnight. "Hey, Kana, what's up? You okay?" The Inuzuka gave her friend a curious glance. Kana stood listening to what sounded like the slashed her blades before she turned her head to meet her friend. "I don't know, Hinomi. Sounds like a battle." She gestured towards the tournament grounds that was usually vacant. Hinomi could hear and also smell the traces of sweat and metal smashing against metal. "Must be having a tournament?" she inquired. Kana nodded and her eyebrow raised slightly when she recognized two members from her squad were having a hushed conversation while speeding towards the stadium seats most likely to watch the fight. "Come on, I want to go see what's going on. This must be a really good fight if it's attracted Tonfa and Kirito," she said with a new hint of enthusiasm before her sandals hit the ground and she bolted after them. Her friend and ninja dog were close behind. Kana walked through the large open entrance before she noticed her friend Tenzo. She had gone on many operations with the wood release user and as such grew a friendship with him despite the still cold demeanor his captain was famed for. She called out when she was close enough to him. "Hey Tenzo, what's up?" Tenzo with his mask moved to the side smiled and waved slightly. "Hey, Kana, fancy seeing you here. You got back from your mission?" She nodded before she turned her head below and watched the two figures fighting. It was a truly awestruck sight watching these two clearly masters of swords at work. She turned her head slightly. "What's up with those two? Why is Kamuzi fighting that guy?" she said, pointing to the ninja who expertly dodged a slash of pure fire chakra in the form of an X and appeared behind him. "Him? He's a new recruit. Strange though. Lord Hokage personally decided to come to this one, and both Ibiki and Inoichi also offered to be proctors." Kana raised her right eyebrow in surprise. "No way. Wow, what's his deal? You know who he is?" Tenzo shook his head and she let out a breath of disappointment. Ever since the Uchiha massacre and the rescue of the strange cloaked figure, she was on a hunt for finding him. She had questions. She wanted to know why he saved her, who he was. It irked her to no end that she is such a well-known Anbu ninja and captain of her own squad could not find this figure. She asked all her friends and even her brother, they all knew nothing. The only one who seemed to know was Fugaku, who flinched every time the discussion was brought up. Things had been tight between the Uchiha and the village. Only a handful of Uchiha had lived and less than a handful could still operate. But a lot of them didn't. They stayed secluded in the Uchiha compound. Not Kana. She was stronger than that. Even after her mother and father were found dead and her brother barely alive, did she not give up. She pushed herself harder into being a ninja, determined to make sure something like that never happened. Some say she became a bit too cold, too focused on her task of finding out why Itachi murdered their clan. No idea who he is. Guy says he was on a personal errand for the Hokage, so his records down to the academy were destroyed. Said his name was Kensai. She watched him fight. His moves were amazing. She watched with fascination as he blocked a handful of quick slashes from Kamuzi and dodged out the way when Monkey sent another slash of fire chakra. "How's he doing?" she asked curiously. "Well, I can't say much about Kenjutsu, never much myself was a fan of it. But I say this guy is a natural-born fighter. He went up against Bear and Sparrow and I've never seen such a display of speed and strength." My guess for his ratings in Taijutsu? Anbu level. Kenjutsu high Chunin. Nay, I'd say easily Jonin or Anbu even. You saw his last Kenjutsu art? Hurricane's Blade? That's a B-level technique and he pulled it off easily despite it being a wind chakra attack. Hinomi said, clearly impressed. After all, wind and lightning combined were not very common. Tenzo smiled in amazement and the large group of Anbu continued to watch as the battle raged on. Kensai sidestepped a downward slash from Monkey before sending a quick jab to the Anbu's midsection, who blocked before slicing horizontally across a move which would have decapitated Kensai had he not ducked under the quick strike. Kensai rammed his fist into Monkey's stomach before sweeping his legs from under him. Monkey hit the ground and just barely parred the downward strike from the deadly sharp katana. It was like a dance. The two warriors engaged with a flurry of attacks, then backed away. Then they gauged each other, studying the other one before bouncing back into the fight. Many times switching their tactics of defense or attacking. Monkey slashed downwards at Kensai, who leapt to avoid it. An error in Kensai's fate, as it was a feint. Just as the blade of the katana came down, Monkey reversed the sword and brought it slicing up. The blade gave a low whistling sound and came within a few inches of Kensai's face, who leaned back, just missing the blade that would have scarred his face. But this worked in Kensai's favor. The momentary dodge gave Kensai the opening he needed. Kensai rammed the pommel of his blade into Monkey's face with a painful crunch. Monkey grunted in pain, but Kensai wasn't done. He then swept under Monkey's arm, disarming his sword before flipping him onto the ground. Monkey landed on his back hard and lifted his head to see the tip of a katana pointed a few inches from his face. Monkey's eyes watched the new recruit's stance. He had disarmed him flawlessly. Monkey raised his hand and spoke firmly. "I concede defeat." The battle was over and Kensai had won his second test. Tenzo whistled, "Damn, he's good." The others nodded in agreement. The speakers boomed and the third Hokage's voice entered in. "Second round is over. Kensai Hayabusa wins the round." Kensai Hayabusa, an interesting name. I don't recognize the clan name, could always be a code name too. Interesting though, there's something familiar about his fighting style. Just can't put my finger on it. Kana thought as she studied the shadowy figure who had just sheathed his sword and was studying the final opponent who had just flashed in. He wore a porcelain mask depicting a brown dog, but Kana knew his name as Ko, lieutenant of Squad 7 and a very powerful shinobi in ninjutsu. The third and final stage will begin. Are you both ready? Both combatants nodded. Very well, you may begin. Kensai stood patiently as he watched the Anbu dog-masked man walk a few steps forward. He stopped and stood motionless for what seemed to be a brief few seconds before he disappeared in a swirl of leaves. Kensai's eyes scanned to the upper left and saw the Anbu midair flashing through a series of hand signs fire release. Dragon Flame Jutsu sending a powerful gust of pure fire chakra towards Kensai. He dropped to the ground and followed with a flash of rapid hand signs into fire release. Phoenix Flower Jutsu cresting tiny fireballs speeding towards Kensai combined with a stream of fire chakra was a deadly combination of B-ranked and A-ranked fire release. The fire engulfed the figure before him and he could see nothing but fire. He wondered if he has actually landed the hit and that this was too easy. The fires dissipated to reveal a massive hardened mud wall earth release, mud wall. Just then 3 figures leapt on top of the wall and Ko instantly recognized 2 of those figures as identical corporal copies of the original, shadow clones. The 3 figures standing on top of the wall flashed through a stream of signs before they sucked in a stream of air. Wind release. Vacuum bullets sending tiny projectiles of air at intense speed. The Anbu dodged the stream of powerful wind projectiles that began to pierce and crush the rock around him. One managed to scrape across his shoulder, tearing at his fabric and cutting his arm. Kensai leapt off the mud wall and began to flash through a series of hand signs fire release. Burning ash sending a powerful stream of burning ash towards the shinobi who created a mud wall to block the attack. He just used 4B to high A-ranked ninjutsu like they were nothing. Tenzo said with eyes widened. He had just used a stream of earth release, fire release, wind release, and shadow clones and he didn't even break a sweat. Back in the examination box the Anbu officers and leaders were watching with fascination. It was clear ninjutsu was Kensai's level of expertise and he was flawlessly combined mid to close range attacks and used masterfully 3 chakra elements like they were his own affinities. Sarutobi was clearly impressed, especially since this was Naruto he was talking about, barely 20 years old and using 3 affinities. At most Chunin and Jonin could use 2 chakra affinities at most and not even be masters at that. To employ affinities to the more experienced jutsu took years of extensive training and discipline. Those in the higher ranks of Anbu and Jonin senseis could use 3 chakra affinities but not at a masterful level. He was using them. By Kamisake, did he just use lightning as well? He heard an Anbu officer to his right gasp in shock. His eyes widened and indeed Kensai had just used a steady stream of lightning to destroy the mud wall. Inoichi turned to Sarutobi and whistled. He can use 4 chakra affinities and employ B to a ranked jutsu like he's a master at it. Just where the hell did you find this kid, Lord Hokage? Is there any more surprises? Sarutobi smiled with his eyes closed and gave a sheepish smile. There was only a handful of people he knew existed that could employ 4 or more element affinities and even less could use all 5, he was one of them. Combined with his full mastery of the Mangekyo Sharingan and near mastery of Fuianjutsu, he wondered just how bad things in the future were that they could leave him into the bloody mess he was. In terms of ninjutsu Kensai had passed with flying colors. Kensai breaking through the wall launched another stream of vacuum bullets while his 2 clones waited for the perfect opportunity to strike. Lightning release. Stream of destruction. The ground began to shake before a stream of blue lightning scattered and raced across the ground. Ko was too slow to move out the way and screamed in pain as he was electrocuted to unconsciousness. The battle was over and Kensai's had won. The room was silent save for the sounds of a fire burning in the background and lightning dancing across the ground. The speakers clicked on and a voice boomed, almost sounding happy. Fight is over. Kensai Hayabusa wins again. Kensai, make your way back to the entrance. A few moments later and one unconscious Anbu being carried away via stretcher. Kensai stood patiently waiting in front of Ibiki, Inoichi, Sarutobi and the 2 Anbu officers. He saw a few Anbu standing off in the far corners having hushed conversations, most likely about what happened. To say you shocked us was an understatement. I'll say. Damn kid, who pissed you off today? Ibiki said with surprise open admiration. Sarutobi smiles, clearly impressed. Regardless, you passed all 3 combat tests with excellent scores. Also got word of your knowledge-based test. Also passed with flying colors. He then turned to grab a clipboard from one of the Anbu officers. Medical screening. He paused reading the contents. He glanced back at Kensai and gave him a quick calculating glance. Passed as well, congratulations and welcome to the Anbu. He handed an identification card to Kensai detailing him as a member of the Anbu. Kensai took the card and bowed to his superiors. Might I speak with you a moment, Kensai? The third Hokage spoke. Kensai nodded. Good to have you with us, kid. Feel sorry for the bastards that ever cross you. Ibiki said before he returns to his duties. Inoichi waved him a farewell which sent another painful stab in his body. Kensai walked over and stood beside Sarutobi. You truly never cease to amaze me. Kensai chuckled under his mask. Had to give a good show, right? Besides, I wasn't even going all out. Sarutobi's eyes widened like saucers. You call that not going out? You have a very strange definition of it then. I wanted to get you some good experience and popularity, but I may have to make you the damn poster boy of the Anbu. He said, taking a smoke from his pipe before smiling. 4 affinities? Just how powerful did you get? I was sure I would have a heart attack if you pulled out water as well. Kensai patted Sarutobi on the shoulder and gave a good laugh. First one in a long time. Don't be preposterous, I wasn't near a good source of water. I'm not the second Hokage, ya know? Sarutobi pipe nearly fell out of his mouth. You aren't kidding, are you? By Kami, you've seriously grown. So what's next? Where do we go from here? That was quite the spectacle you threw on Hayabusa. Don't think I've seen a good fight like that in a long time. You do realize this was an exam and not a real fight, right? And just like that, Kensai hands curled up in a fist. Right on cue, Danzo had to make himself known again. Just making sure I had good marks. Hold back and certainly would not have gotten in. Danzo, one visible eye closed. Surely. But something tells me you weren't going all out though. Kensai faces him and his cold eyes bore into Danzo. Course, when I fight a man for real, I don't want him to know what I can really do. He said coldly. Well said. And speaking of fighting, what about my offer? Root has been disbanded obviously. But I'm sure your skill as a shinobi would be more suited to working for me? Kensai adjusted the sword strapped to his back before he spoke. Thanks, but I'm gonna have to decline. Anbu is much better suited for my skills and I lack the— He walked past Danzo before speaking more quietly. Darkness you like to pride yourself on. Leaving Danzo to narrow his eyes and watch the young man walk towards the Hokage. Anyway, where were we? Right, well, we'll be putting you on a squad. The other Anbu officers agreed that Squad 9 will be the best fit. Know how much you probably want to be on Squad Row, but they're full. But fret not, I put in an order that you work for me most of the time. You'll still do missions with your squad, but I thought it is better if you work directly under my command, based on our current predicament. Kensai nodded in understanding. Makes sense. Well, sounds like a plan then. Glad you understand. I'll have Tenzo escort you to your new team. I believe they are all back from a mission and be a perfect opportunity for you to meet them. He gestured for Tenzo to approach and the wood-style user did as he was ordered. My lord, he said bowing, take our newest recruit to meet his team, Team 9. Make sure he gets settled in. Tenzo nodded. At once, Lord Hokage. Tenzo gestured for Kensai to follow. The two began to walk a few steps before Sarutobi called out to Kensai, causing both of them to stop. Kensai, mingle with your squadron, okay? Kensai turned back around and gave the old man a lingering gaze before he nodded and followed Tenzo. The duo had walked a good few minutes down a few corridors before Tenzo spoke. That was quite the battle during the last fight. At first glance, I thought taijutsu was going to be your expertise. Guess I get to learn more about your past, he said with a slight grin. Kensai turned his head to look at the man before he nodded. Sure. Tenzo stopped in front of a wooden door and Kensai could see the words, Team 9 Locker Room, titles above the door in golden letters. Here we are, he said, opening the door before stepping in. Kensai gave a quick sigh before he stepped into the room as well. The room was pretty ordinary looking, stone gray walls, little to no decorations except a poster of an Anbu shinobi holding a tanto in reverse grip. The room held a handful of lockers placed on each side and 2 benches currently being occupied by 3 Anbu members changing out of their gear. The room suddenly became quiet and the 6 Anbu members all stared at him, some with their mask off, some with them off, revealing curious glances. Tenzo rubbed the back of his head before he spoke. Hey, guys, sorry to barge in, but this is your new teammate. just completed his examination. He patted Kensai's shoulder and pushed him slightly forward to introduce him. Kensai faces Yamato before he spoke firmly. Pleasure to meet you all. My name is Kensai Hayabusa. I'll be Squad 9 newest member. Those words felt weird being spoken from his mouth, almost like this was a dream of some kind and he really was back in the war. You're the guy who gave Sparrow and Bear that beating. Saw the fight with my own eyes. Kick-ass man. Kensai turned his head to see a man dressed in the standard Anbu uniform with white silver hair tied in a ponytail. He had a white porcelain mask of a bird with a red flame marking starting from the top left side going just a little bit over and past the left eye hole. Name's Toa. Nice to meet you, newbie. Is this true, Toa? A feminine voice spoke up. She had long blonde hair also tied in a ponytail with 3 yellow needles on each side set inside her hair. She sported a cat-like Anbu mask with purple-colored arrow-like markings on her mask and a tanto blade strapped to her back. She turned to her squad mate as she removed her forearm guards as she spoke. Clear as day. Kamachi. Used 4 chakra affinities as well. Real talented. A locker door slammed caused the group of shinobi to stop and turn to a man who walked around and stood a few feet in front of Kensai. He stood firm and Kensai could see he was clearly well built for taijutsu. He had short spiky brown hair and sported a yellow and red lion-like Anbu porcelain mask strapped to his shoulder, revealing a stoic-like man in his late 30s with a scar in the shape of a kunai blade going diagonally across his nose and stopping near his eyebrow. Is that so? You can use 4 chakra affinities? He said in a gruff voice before he spoke. Kensai, not one to beat around the bush, nodded without hesitation. Yes, sir. The man bore a calculating gaze into Kensai like he was studying what he was made of, what was in his soul. He noticed the tired single green eye that reflected back at him. Then we're glad to have your skill set. As he spoke his facial expressions softened and he reached out his hand before smiling. Kensai nodded and reached out grasping the man's forearm in an embrace. Thanks, hope to serve you well, sir. Hold you to it. Also, drop the formalities, kid. Name's Kaizan, I'm the squad leader. He then turned his attention back to the 2 who spoke before. As I'm sure you know, the female is Kamachi and her partner is Toa. They work as a pair, but she's also our official medical nen. He then turned his attention to a large boulder-like man who looked to be around 6 feet 4. He had short spiky brown hair and sideburns with thick brown eyebrows over his strong brown eyes. A white and brown porcelain mask depicting a monkey was strapped to his shoulder. That's R.O. He's our muscle-bound. Ro nodded a friendly greeting and Kensai returned it. He turned to a female character who was leaning against the stone wall studying him. She had long brown hair tied in a ponytail. He could see her bright blue eyes with a hint of boredom in them in the eye sockets of her cat-like mask with 3 red whiskers on each cheek. She sported the same Anbu uniform and carried a tanto blade strapped to her back. That's Hino. He began to speak, but a cold glance from the woman made him stop. I mean Soko. Don't mind her tomboyish attitude. She sends him another glare before she turned to Kensai and nodded a greeting. Our last member is Seijiro. He pointed to a lean-built man sporting a green and yellow porcelain snake-like mask strapped against his shoulder and sported a Chikuto sword strapped against his back. The man gave him a once-over before he scoffed, clearly not impressed. Our last 2 members are on a mission right now, but I'm sure you'll meet them tomorrow. Kensai bowed slightly with respect before he spoke. Thank you for the welcome. Sure thing, kid. You can take the locker in the back. He gestured to the unoccupied locker in the back. Usually we have a training, orientation of sorts when a new guy joins right away, but we're all very tired and I'm sure you are as well. So meet at Training Ground 9 first thing tomorrow. He said before he walked towards the door. Oh, one more thing. He turned and faced the time-traveling shinobi and placed his hand on his shoulder. Welcome to Team Komenu, he said with a smile before walking out the door. Team 6 locker room. 2 lone figures in the locker room were having a conversation. This was the infamous squad row that reported directly towards the Hokage. One figure was currently leaned against the locker while the other seemed to be clearing out his. You watched the fight? The figure spoke again to his friend. What fight? You talking about all that commotion in the arena, Yamato? The silver spiky-haired man spoke. He sported the standard Konoha flak jacket over his lean but muscular build. He was around 5 feet 11 with a large headband covering his left eye. This was the famous Kakashi Hitaki, the copy ninja. Yeah, was an evaluation for some new recruit in the Anbu. Name was Kensai Hayabusa, I believe. Kakashi stopped picking a chakra blade he had kept after a mission from the Land of Waves. Strange, I don't recognize that name. How old was he? Yamato shrugged. Maybe a few years younger than you. Beside the point though, he seemed to be on very good terms with the Hokage, and word is, the Hokage requested an opening for him in the ranks. He claimed was on a long mission for the Hokage, and all his records down to the academy were destroyed. Kakashi let that information sink in before he resumed packing, placing his forearm guards in the box. How did he do? What was he like? Kakashi didn't really care much about whoever this new guy was, but having a conversation kept Yamato off his case about being discharged from the Anbu. Yamato chuckled. Where to begin? The kid was a natural fighter. Don't even think Itachi was that good when he joined. Basically wiped the floor in taijutsu, kenjutsu and ninjutsu. He used 4 chakra affinities in battle without breaking a sweat and using mid-A to high B ranked jutsu. That good, huh? 4? You sure he's not ex-Anbu already? Good, very well be. Might explain his personality. He's a lot like you though. Kakashi stopped and turned to face his friend. What do you mean? I mean, usually, everyone who comes in here is either overconfident or terrified out of their mind. Kensai was ice calm the entire time. Barely spoke to me. He had a hint of sadness with him. I don't know why, but there was something about him. He even asked about you. About me? Why? This piqued Kakashi. While it was no stranger that he had lots of fans, most everyone knew the quiet and reserved man Kakashi was. He didn't like much going out with his squad or really with anyone. People left him be, and he was happy with that. This was surprising coming from someone whom he was now told was also quiet and suffering trauma about something wanted to know about him. Just what you were like. He knew you were very quiet and stuff. Oh, and that you read a lot of books and were a pervert. He said, snickering at that last part. TCH, I'm not a pervert, Yamato, he said, shaking his head. Interesting. Guess I'll have to look out for this Kensai fellow. Which squad is he with? Squad 9, but from what I heard he's most of the time going to be working with Lord Third. No idea why. Squad 9? If I believe that's Kaizan's squad. Great shinobi, bit too soft in his mind, but a great squad. Not that it mattered much for him, he was leaving. He sighed before he continued to pack his gear. He would have to return his Anbu equipment to the equipment department later. Why Lord Third was making him a Jonin sensei he didn't know. But one thing was certain, this Kensai piqued his mind. That's all for now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.